Hi guys, what's up?
Sap!
Sap! Welcome to Playing Doodler. I didn't actually mean to pull up the webcam immediately, but I did. I was going to do our usual like standby screen first, and
You madman.
that is me. We've got a slightly new setup today for our vlog.
I'm actually in Salt Lake.
He's actually in Salt Lake. I thought you were going to say I'm actually in the light because we switched our...
You can see my face since I don't have a giant thing in front of it.
Hey, Marin, the sky is up. That's what's up, you see. That's the joke. So as you can see, we've swapped the room. Like, the wall back there was where the computer used to be, and the computer's now where the wall used to be.
Nobody can tell.
I'm pointing it out for those continuity hounds that love to hound us.
Going through all our old videos to see what's different.
No, that's what you do. You're going to comment 2 minutes 33 seconds. The wall is different.
Or it hasn't been that long.
It hasn't been that long of a stream.
I'm far more precise than that.
And we also gave him a different mic. It's now strapped to his face. So hopefully that will solve some audio problems I've been having in editing. And if you hear like stupid audio problems,
it's just us talking.
It's just us talking, and ignore that. Anyway, this is our second vlog. We did our first one back in January about what makes a good Let's Play.
Also Undertale.
Also, we talked about Undertale a lot. This vlog is going to be slightly different. Hopefully less Undertale, but you never know. It might come up.
Well, I guess it kind of could relate a little bit.
But
anyway.
we are going to today be talking about nostalgia. Weedy wow!
I guess I should have worn my my Barrio Brothers shirt.
Hey Tim. So what brought this particular stream on is recently I read
the best book ever written, the Bible.
All the nostalgia that's in the Bible. Oh, do you remember back in the days when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego almost died?
Thrown into the fiery
That's
furnace.
so much better than these days when all we have is rebuilding.
100-degree Utah summer.
I'm nostalgic for those fiery days. No, I'm not the Bible. What I read was a book that this guy recommended to me, even though he's only gone through about half of it.
I recommended the trailer of the book.
You recommended the trailer of the book.
I said, let's look at the trailer, and then you decided to go read the book. I guess I kind of recommended it. Carry on. The trailer.
I don't know how to
movie.
take that. I honestly don't know how to take that. The book was Ready Player One. If you haven't read it, it's basically if a generic young adult fantasy novel, not fantasy novel, but like urban fantasy,
science fiction,
like there have been like 30 of them in the past 10 years, met a Wikipedia article about the 80s, you would have this book. And people have been recommending it to me for so long because they're like, oh, you will understand all these references and you'll think this thing is awesome. And like, because it's got not just 80s references, but like old video game references. It was called Ready Player One. And so I'm going to...
And they're making a movie out of it.
They are making a movie out of it. And the trailer does look pretty cool. Steven Spielberg is directing it. And the audiobook
might have Will Wheaton in it.
The audiobook was narrated by Will Wheaton because for some reason he gives cred to things.
It's just kind of associated with the 80s.
I know. Well, with nerddom, I think more so than just the 80s. I've got a bit of an issue with this book.
Here it comes.
Because it falls under this certain umbrella of what Brady Flanagan over at Reviews versus the World. I'm just plugging him, hoping that he'll plug us. But he'll probably never watch this video.
You got into your commercial voice, so.
What he calls nostalgia porn.
Sick.
Which is basically, it's not actual porn. So keep this. We're still a G-rated stream.
You use the word, not me. I just said sick.
What it is so they're throwing so much nostalgic references at you all the time. It's like, I could actually pull it up, I guess.
Something. It's like Kung Fury, which is a movie that came out
not even
recently.
not even that, because the point of Kung Fury isn't the 80s references. The point of Kung Fury is that it's the 80s style is so over the top that you're just like, yeah, like you don't have to understand the 80s in order to think that movie's cool. Though it does help because it takes all the cool stuff from the 80s and like electrifies it.
Thanks.
You're welcome. But this book, it's the basic gist of the book is that like it's a dystopian future. Tim, which book did you like, Tim? Did you, Ready Player One or
Ready Player 2
or Kung Fury? I guess Kung Fury is not a book.
Ready Doodler 2 is the book that he read.
It's just about some guy making drawings about the 80s.
It's just about me.
It's just about you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know this premise now. Hold on. I gotta take a drink while he's explaining this.
Hold on, I'm not ready.
Oh,
I'm not ready. I'm not the Ready Doodler
Not
2.
Ready Doodler 2.
Yeah, that would be me. Hold on, I'm getting to it.
Okay. That's the subtitle. No, the problem with the book is that it exists, like the nostalgia in it, it exists for nostalgia's sake. Like, it's all about these 80s references, and basically, okay, so the basic plot is that it's this dystopian future, and the world has gone to pot because global warming. What are you doing to your microphone? What is going on back there?
Disentangling tape from my beard. Hold on. Hold on, I got it.
There's going to be so many recording issues.
I got it.
Okay.
It wasn't me. It slipped. I told you I would. This thing wouldn't.
All right.
Okay, we're good. I think.
We're good. Tell me if there's any mic issues back there, by the way. Both, chat, tell me if there's any issues.
Yeah, tell me if I'm like muffled or scratchy or whatever.
And if you can hear him clearly, that means we definitely need to fix it. Zing! That was a weird... That was a zing! Sorry, Mr. Sullivan. I tried to zing you, but I couldn't do it.
Okay, go on about Ready Player One.
Okay, Ready Player One. It's a dystopian future. The world's gone to pot because oil or global warming or... It honestly...
Trump, probably.
Chat is saying you are muffled and Tim is saying, fix it!
Okay, fine, dude. You gotta fix this, man.
Okay, hold on. We'll cut this part out when we repost
Tape
this.
went
One
to my
second.
beard and then all heck broke loose.
Amuse yourselves for a second, chat.
So anyway, you were saying about Ready Player One.
Okay. Now we've got our mic problem fixed. Ooh, now we can see the screen of the Macintosh. That's nice. That's my recording computer over there, but it says Mickey Mouse goes into action. You can't see it. So, Ready Player One, dystopian future. I've said this 7 times. So the whole world, instead of, trying to fix their problems and get the world habitable again, instead, they're all obsessed with this online, immersive VR game that is basically if Facebook met World of Warcraft met the 80s, even though it takes place in, 2040 something?
2045.
2045, thank you.
The trailer came out and he mentions it. My name's Wade Watts, and I was born in 2025. It's now 2045. Go watch the trailer. It's pretty good.
I'll do it. I've seen it. I'll do it later.
I encourage you to watch that
the
trailer.
movie might be good. It's just the book. So they all play this game, and basically the guy who made this game, his backstory is half Richard Garriott and half Steve Jobs. And... did you hear that reference I just made there to Richard Garriott and Steve Jobs?
I have no idea who that first person is, but the second person, yes, I know.
See, that's the problem with this book, is if you don't know these obscure nerdy references...
It encourages you to go to your local library to find out.
It encourages you to go to Wikipedia, but there's 30 of them per page. It's and then we played Astro Smash, and... He threw the Intellivision controller at me.
And he hit me in the head with a Teddy Ruxpin while I was wearing my Punky Brewster shirt.
It's not even that. That's too mainstream, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
I believe what you meant to say was, I was playing my ColecoVision, but those jerks over at Activision said, Pitfall, and so on and so forth.
Everybody knows Activision, dude.
Ghosts. I know it's the market he's writing for, Tim. The biggest problem is this. The references don't contribute anything to the actual story.
That's what we're getting at.
That's the real problem.
That's what he's getting at.
Not that there are references or that they are poorly explained, because some of them he explains, like, really goes into detail and was like, Pac-Man was a game that came out in 1979 by Namco, and it was inspired by a pizza. And,
yeah,
he goes on for like 3 pages like that.
Specifically, he talks about adventure and explains a lot about adventure.
He does talk about adventure. We might actually end up playing that at the end of the stream. We haven't decided yet. If you guys are good, if you're good, if you're stick around that long is what I meant to say. Not if you're good.
Thanks,
like
Dad.
We're trying to bribe you to. We'll play a little bit of an adventure remake at the end of the stream, where the gameplay is exactly the same. The graphics have been updated, and
the names have been changed to protect the innocent,
and the points don't matter. Anyway, there are only really 2 references in the entire book that I think are relevant to the story or the characters or to help flesh out the world, other than it's another 80s reference. And that is 2 big... There's one big one and one little one. And the big one is, like you saying, is the adventure thing. Because the game Adventure that came out in the Atari was the first game with an Easter egg in it. Which is basically, if you do this really obscure thing and take it to this other obscure thing, you have to, like, take a dot to a room and things wig out. It doesn't really matter the logistics. Although, if you read the book, you'll know the logistics, because, boy, he spells them out for some reason. The point is, an Easter egg is something that the programmer hid that if you do a lot of really obscure things, you can find.
Right.
And a lot of video games have them, but Adventure was the first one. And so this guy who made this online game has basically left an Easter egg somewhere in the game that you've got to find. And he said in his will that the first person who finds it gets his entire fortune. It's like $250 billion or something.
It's a lot of money because it's the fortune and you own the Oasis, which is the online virtual world.
Right. So that's something that our protagonist wants because
who doesn't want to be rich?
Who doesn't want to be rich? That's fine. The other reference was near the beginning of the book when he said he watched a lot of Family Ties. And the reason that I thought that one was relevant, because then he notes how he uses Family Ties, as a bit of escapism because his own family life kind of sucks, and it's not like these 80s sitcoms. It's a lot worse because he lives with his aunt who doesn't like him and, like, beats him up or whatever. I don't know.
His aunt's boyfriend.
His aunt's boyfriend beats him up, and his aunt doesn't like him, and blah 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 blah. Because he lives, like, in a trailer park that's, like, stacked vertically because of the future.
Called the Stacks. Watch the trailer, you'll see them.
That's fine.
I'm telling other people.
I said that's fine. Your mic just looks so much softer on there.
I don't know. I'm talking into it. It's right in front of my mouth.
I know. I'm just nervous.
Okay.
Okay. It's fine.
Tell us if I'm too soft.
It's Willy Wonka with video games.
It essentially is.
Yeah, find my golden ticket and inherit my factory.
Yeah. Except you find the golden key or the golden egg or whatever it is.
It's the Easter egg. Here's the problem. Beyond those 2 references, every single 80s reference in it, well, maybe 3 if you count. There's one at the climax, kind of. I don't know how much I want to go into spoiler territory because Doodler back there hasn't read the whole thing. And I'm sure that, I don't know how many of you, Tim obviously, I guess, has because he's talking about it.
I listened to about half of it on YouTube, and then they took it down off of YouTube because of copyright. Those jerks. It was probably Sorrento.
You could go to the library, And
I haven't gotten around to it because I like listening to audiobooks. I've been meaning to get it free from something.
You could get the audiobook from the library,
That requires going to the library, and they tore the old library down.
To make room for a stack of trailers. See, it's happening already. Spencer359, by the way, says #Doodler.
Thanks.
So, other than those 2 references, and possibly more near the end that I'm not going to spoil, all of the rest of the references have no
Are superfluous.
relevance to anything other than this is a thing that existed in the 80s. For example, when the guy finds the first step to find this Easter egg, he ends up having to go through the D&D module Tomb of Horrors and then playing a game of Joust at the end with the Lich King that's there. The problem is the Tomb of Horrors could have been literally anything. Like, there's nothing specifically about the Tomb of Horrors other than it's a thing that was in the 80s that makes it relevant. Like, he doesn't describe the Tomb of Horrors. He doesn't say anything about how he went through the Tomb of Horrors and then he was in this room and there was a, you know, he basically says, and then I went through the Tomb of Horrors. But luckily I had memorized the book when I was a baby, so I could do it.
He's just like you. This is your life story, man.
Sir Watts says he's having dinner with the missionaries. He will be back soon.
That doesn't have anything to do with nostalgia. Ask what they think of Ready Player One.
That is a good question for those
Those missionaries?
For the missionaries. No, for those of you in chat, besides Tim, you know, also offer your opinions and counterpoints, because a lot of people like this book. And I want to talk more generally about nostalgia in a minute once I'm done talking about Ready Player One. But then they play a game of Joust. And he describes what Joust is, but what Joust is has nothing to do with the plot. Like, they could have put any game in there, and it would have been the exact same plot. Which is okay, but every single reference, there's at one point where he reenacts War Games, the movie War Games. Not because the movie War Games has any significance in the larger universe of the what? What are you going to say?
Don't forget Lady Hawk. He talks a lot about Lady Hawk.
That's true, for no reason. That never comes up. It's just nerds arguing.
I think he has to reenact some of Edward Scissorhands, too. But
that is not a part of the book I ever read.
Never mind. It's something else. It had it was something with Winona Ryder in it. I know she makes an appearance in the book.
Wing Commander 3. Spencer 359 brings up Wing Commander 3, which is a fun FMV game from the 90s with Mark Hamill in it. What does that have to do with anything? Nothing. But that's the point. Nothing in the book has anything to do with what's happening in the book. It's all just stuff thrown at you. It has nothing to do with the actual plot of the book, because the actual plot of the book isn't all that great either. Because it's basically there's a plucky, barely 18-year-old boy trying to beat the system, and the bad guys are cartoonishly evil, like Scooby-Doo villain levels of evil.
No wonder they talk about Rush so much, because it's just like the Rush concept album that you hate too.
I don't hate the Rush concept album. Where did that come from?
You hate it so bad.
No, I don't.
You thought it was dumb.
I have never said this.
You thought it was
that is
uninspired.
You're just making stuff up.
No,
I like Rush.
Yeah, but it was the Rush concept album where he talks about the guitar he finds, and you're like, this is lame.
I don't remember this at all.
We had a conversation. This was years ago. It was after Sheldon let you borrow it.
Yeah,
that's a different story.
Now everyone thinks I hate Rush.
But Rush is a great band, is all I'm trying to say. And anyone who hates it is a communist. Also, check the trailer, because they do they do Rush's Tom Sawyer in the trailer.
They do Rush's Tom Sawyer in an episode of Chuck when he plays, I forget what it is, Space Invaders?
That sounds like a great episode.
It is a fun episode.
Just because it has Rush in it.
But
no other reason.
You know why it's a great episode? Not because...
No, because it has Rush in it.
Because you've got the dorky guy playing the guitar who suddenly is this video game master, and it's hilarious. Not because there's a guy who plays video games, but because you know the character well enough that it's funny and interesting, because the character is interesting. Now we've got hashtags saying I'm a communist in chat, so thank you for that. That's what we all... I got a floof. There it goes. I'm a communist, guys. Just, now I've been flagged.
No wonder his hair's red.
TSA officers will
But his
show up.
blood's red, too. His face is pink.
Well, that's just because of our bad lighting. Remember, we were trying to set up the webcam for 10 minutes to get the lighting right, and this is the best we could come up with, which is not great.
I remember.
Yeah, it was 20... What the... Sorry, I looked back and then came back and I'd frozen on looking that way.
You never look back at me.
Take a drink. Now they're calling the Secret Service on me.
Scooby-Doo villains.
Scooby-Doo villains, where are you?
Plot that isn't that great is what you were talking about.
Plot that isn't that great. And that's the thing is all this stuff wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that the plot was super predictable. Like almost every single plot twist I got about 5 minutes before it happened, if not like 50 pages before it happened. I don't want to get into details because of spoilers, though. Here's the thing.
You were going to do that quiz with me to see if I could predict portions of the plot.
Oh, now I got to think of what I was going to say. I came up with a thing when we were talking earlier today about the stream about. I'd say something from the book, and he'd be like, all right, so his friend at the beginning, H.
Yeah, I think so.
Who is H in real life? What is your first guess?
Like, who is he?
Yeah.
Sorrento.
No, not specifically, but just in general. Like,
just some guy from the internet that you happen to run into?
you think it's just some guy?
Or it's some dude from his school?
Just some dude from his school? Okay, maybe you can't predict that. No,
I don't. I listened to this book like 6 months ago, and
A hard-working gentleman in a coal mine, asks chat. No, it's H. It's spelled A-E-C-H. H. The point is that because
is it Fonzie?
no, because and keep in mind this is a game about playing a giant MMO where you make your own avatar and so long and your level's too quiet. I'm going to turn you up here real quick. 1 second.
Okay.
Talk.
Whoop.
Talk.
I'm talking, man. That was whoop is a word. And whoop is definitely a word also. The chat's staring at your butt, dude.
I know. Drink it in, chat.
Sick.
They already think your feet are sexy, apparently.
Well,
Your giant hobbit feet.
not as big as Dan Rock's. You got to see his. He's got hair all over him. Anyway.
Okay. I totally... Oh, H. What the H? Keep in mind, this is a book about people making avatars, right? Being...
Oh, it's Aang from The Last Airbender. James.
No, that's not an 80s reference.
It's James Cameron.
No.
He is an 80s reference.
No. H ends up being... This is a slight spoiler, but it doesn't really matter. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen for the next 30 seconds. Just cover your ears and go la 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 la.
la. Well, nobody
Don't you do it.
Oh, okay.
H is a sassy, fat black woman who has a male avatar because the internet.
Oh, okay. That's what you're getting at.
That's what I'm getting at.
Somebody, yeah.
So that's the problem. That's not a problem. The real problem with that particular plot twist is then the author spends like 2 pages being like, but that's okay because it's progressive or something. Like really goes heavy-handed about it, which is dumb. There's also one part near the end of the book where that's not about nostalgia, but is about and this is kind of a spoiler too. He ends up having to infiltrate the real life headquarters of the bad guys in the dumbest way. The infiltration itself isn't too bad. I'm not going to say what he does or how it all plays out.
Does he go through a duct?
He does not go through a duct.
Oh, I don't believe it. Most times they go through a duct.
My goodness. What happens is so angerfying because the author deliberately doesn't tell you what his plan is. It just like at the end of part 2, it's like, I have a plan. And then beginning of part 3, you just see his plan come to fruition. Yeah, except the problem is that...
Or unfurl.
His plan goes off without a hitch. Nothing goes wrong in his plan. There is no danger in what happens, what he's doing, because every single step of the way, he's one step ahead of the bad guys who never catch on to anything that he's doing at all. There's no tension.
So he really is a video game avatar.
It's a Mary Sue story. It's a story that you can go to fanfiction.net and read 1,000 stories exactly like it.
No wonder everybody loves it, man.
This is not Space Quest 5. What? What does that have to do with anything? I'm so confused by chat now.
Well, they're used to us playing horrible nostalgic games.
Tim says he sneaks up in a cardboard box.
That would be more clever than this, probably.
So anyway, that's excuse me, I'm sorry. The prose is garbage. He just describes things happening without really like using good language choice.
Really
to suck you
using
in.
good language words.
He basically just was like, and then I did this thing, and it looked stupid. Or he uses nostalgia as a shorthand, where he's like, and then we were at this party. The playlist was, and he lists like 20 songs by Duran Duran or whatever that were playing, because, you know, the 80s.
Duran Duran is great, and it makes things better.
It's not a statement of the quality of Duran Duran. It's just the fact that he's like, this is the playlist at this party, and everyone was wearing outfits out of these 4 movies.
You just hate the Fab Five, I think.
And then I danced with my girlfriend, and she was wearing an outfit out of Real Genius, but I came up with the DeLorean that also had Kit from Knight Rider in it, and because and it has nothing to do with anything, nothing at all. It's just stuff, and it's
This is one of my favorite things.
it's just stuff.
I love that you're so upset about
Does
this.
it matter that he came up in the DeLorean? No, because there's nothing about a DeLorean intrinsically that has anything to do with a plot. Does it matter that the playlist was Duran Duran? No, because anything that's Duran Duran doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in the story.
Dude, I bet you the screenwriters will fix all the problems. Or, conversely, make them worse.
That depends on the screenwriters.
I mean, Spielberg.
Careful, Spencer. There are also kids on the stream, so keep chat a little less PG-13, if you would. Thank you. Anyway, but yeah, that's he's just saying what he's done when Duran Duran was playing in the background.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, and there's some things that it's okay, you didn't know. There's some things that are also a bit of an issue in the sense that I just completely lost my train of thought. Sorry.
You were just thinking about the Fab Five and how great they are.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
It's Duran Duran.
Oh. I didn't know they had a nickname.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not qualified for this nostalgia stream.
The problem is
Thanks
you
for
just
watching.
you just don't know anything about the 80s.
What?
You just didn't experience it like the rest of us did.
Here's a question.
You got to read more Wikipedia.
Tim, question. I'm not mad because everyone loves it. I'm mad because it's not good, but everyone loves it. It's like, I like things that people like.
I like things that people like.
No, because Tim's saying, you're just mad because everyone likes it and you don't like it because you're an old curmudgeon.
You're an old doodly.
You're an old doodly. Actually, I don't know if there are any kids watching. Marin was watching earlier. She said one thing and then disappeared, so I don't even know if she's still on there. Tim, if there was a game, not a game. If there was a novel, but instead of all these 80s references, it was all like 60s references. Like, I had to watch my favorite episode of Gunsmoke, and then there's this one episode of the Flintstones where this thing happened, but it's okay because Ma and Pa Kettle, the clue was in the last episode of Welcome Back, Cotter, and so on and so forth.
You could mention, I guess they're too mainstream. I was going to say Batman and Star Trek, the two things you think of when you think of the 60s.
Yeah, but you're right. They're too mainstream because those Batman and Star Trek have transcended the decade.
Oh.
So, Carl is now watching, so we do have a kid in chat. Spencer would like to know, by the way, if you have images inside your head constantly, or do you just have pictures spring to you?
Is he talking to you or to me?
Talking to you. He said, does the Doodler specifically. I'm not decrying Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I don't have anything Star Trek in here because I cleaned up. Here, I'll wear this hat again to show how much I like the 80s.
No, this man's a huge Trekkie. To answer your question, I do have constant images going through my head, and I have things come to me.
The images that come to him then go through his head. I don't know. I'm not an artist.
For instance, you've been running through my mind all night.
Ghibli. Anyway,
that's why you're so tired.
There are children in remember when Annalisa got like super mad when I was like, there are kids in the chat, and she's all like, I want to say what I dang well plays. F. Anyway.
Yes, I do remember.
It's just, they're not watching tonight, even though I've told them 7 times.
It's because of that one time you told her.
Oh, they don't have.
Really, you're to blame here.
So that 70s show, Tim asks.
But here's the thing: there are things that are set in a certain time frame. Like, for example, I will use one that I thought of when I was thinking about this. Napoleon Dynamite. It was set in the 80s. I didn't even really know it was set in the 80s because it's not about being set in the 80s. It's about the characters.
Napoleon Dynamite was not set in the 80s.
Yes, it is, and I will argue with you about that.
Yeah, they have a song account in 2005 they dance to.
I know they do. And that's an anachronism. Mm-hmm. But it is still set in the 80s.
It's set in Idaho, according to the creators. When they were asked that question, they're like, is this set in the 80s or is it set in now? And they said, it's set in Idaho.
It's still set in the 80s. Look at the styles of what everybody's wearing, man.
I know, because Idaho's 20 years behind everything else. That was part of the joke.
Fine, whatever. Okay, I'm going to use it as an example. Mm-hmm. No matter where that one's set, it's not about that thing. That adds some style to it, right? Mm-hmm. But it was about the characters, okay?
Right.
And how the characters progressed.
And Tim, the reason people love that 70s show is not because it was set in the 70s. And it wasn't because everyone in the 70s show went around going, boy, I sure do love disco. Hey, do you remember learning the electric company? I don't know.
Look at us walking around in the past and all these funny clothes we wear.
Ha ha ha. But no, they cared because they had the dad call everyone a dumb A.
Because, the show was actually funny. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with most things.
And I wouldn't be
that are set in a
right.
certain time period.
I wouldn't be so down on Ready Player One if the story wasn't so fanfiction.net, where the protagonist can do no wrong, the bad guys are cartoonishly evil, the love interest
probably
is
twirling in the mustaches.
The love interest is so cliche-tastic that she starts out as the strong rival, but in the end she falls in love with the other guy because he's the other protagonist.
Guy. Yeah.
Also, they have a shared love of the 80s, so they have that in common.
But everybody loves the 80s.
Exactly. Bye, Claire. Thanks for being here. Carl's like, when will something interesting happen? This is the point of a vlog, Carl's. We talk a bunch. We might play game at the end.
I told you it was going to be a discussion, Carl.
So now we've got to make something interesting happen. Let's okay.
Lots of interesting things have happened.
I'll probably slog some more in Ready Player One in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit more about nostalgia in general when it comes to being a selling point. Because my issue with the book is that when you take away the nostalgia parts, what's left in that book? Is it any good? And broadening that out, when you take works of art that specifically don't just take place in a certain time period like that 70s show or whatever, but exploit nostalgic images and sounds and works, not just as cameos or as background settings, but as actual like focuses of the work. When is that justified? When is it not? Does it make things better? Does it make things worse? Does it really matter? Like, and kind of what do you guys think about that specifically? Red in Voyager. I don't know what that means.
Red, the character Red from that 70s show, he played one of those time bandits or whatever from Voyager.
That's right. No, that's right. He was like the guy who kept erasing the history. He was also the Federation president in Star Trek 6 too.
Was he?
He actually, yeah.
The guy, didn't he have a bunch of makeup on?
Yeah, the white hair and the.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, and he erased the histories of all these planets because he was trying to like resurrect his wife or something. So he was trying to like wipe out the war that made her die. I don't remember. It was actually a pretty good episode if it wasn't for the fact that it ended with the reset button.
Yeah,
but,
of the entire season.
Voyager, whatever. It wasn't the whole season. It was just 2 episods.
No, but it was a year. It was the Year of Hell.
Yeah, the Year of Hell was the name of the episode.
It wasn't a full season. It was, in
right.
In continuity, it was actual a large time period.
There's a lot of Voyager that I've never actually watched, but that actual 2-parter I have, and it's good. It just suffers for being Voyager in the fact that it ended up having no consequences at the end because Voyager.
Ooh, I'm glad we talked about Voyager.
Okay, here we go.
I was thinking about Star Trek, okay, when I thought about nostalgia, because here's the thing. One, I've been going back and watching the 60s TOS Star Trek, the original series. I'm in the 3rd season now, and I hope to finish it. Because I really love the campy old Star Trek, okay? I love it. I love it to death. And I also watch reviews of it. And it's got a ton of camp, but there's also sometimes there it shines. Like when I went back to watch original Trek back when they were re-showing it when I was in high school, I was like, oh, this is going to be one of like Flash Gordon or something, or one of those really terrible sci-fi shows.
Right.
And it kept surprising me, and it continues to do that, where I'm like, there's a lot of good character work, tons of good character work, tons of good stories. There's a lot of bad, really dumb stuff in it too, but enough to keep you coming back for more.
That's the funny thing about TOS is that I grew up on the Next Generation too, so it took me a while to watch the original series. And I actually am not sure I've actually watched the whole thing. But you're right. Like the reason that show is good is not because of the sci-fi, or even the technology. It's because the characters themselves are interesting.
Right, and how they interplay. I mean,
right.
Kirk, Spock, and McCoy aren't necessary for each other. And they even recognize they're necessary for each other because they balance each other so well.
It's got really good acting.
Yeah. And briefly, you've got the logical one. He's the brains with Spock. You have the heart, the really emotional one, which is McCoy. And then you have Kirk, who's the balance between the two, and he has the intuition. That's why he's the captain.
Right.
That's why he's, the best man for the job.
So anyway.
So aside from that, so you got the original series, and I want to talk about all of Star Trek in general.
Okay.
All the series.
Before you talk, I just want to say real quick, Tim, I do want to talk about what you're saying about Marvel stuff as well, because I have a counterpoint to that.
I think I wanted to say stuff about Marvel later, too.
So
I'm going to pencil that in my pencil box.
Briefly, my Marvel counterpoint is I didn't grow up with Marvel. I have no nostalgia whatsoever when it comes to Marvel. And I still like those movies. The ones that I've seen. I haven't even seen them all. But the ones that I've seen, I haven't thought any of them were absolutely like the best movies I've ever seen. But except for Iron Man 2, which sucked, most of the Marvel movies I've seen, I'm like, that's a good movie. But it's not a nostalgic thing for me. It's just the movie was good. Spencer is nerding out in his Star Trek stuff, so go ahead and talk about Star Trek more.
Okay, Star Trek. We'll get back to Marvel because I do have a lot to say about Marvel too. Star Trek. Okay. Recently, we've got 2 upcoming series. Right. We've got Star Trek Discovery.
Right.
Which is the new big series. It's action based. It looks like it's very similar to the new movies they've recently made. Okay. You have another one that is a parody series called The Orville. Not made by Star Trek, but it is obviously, like Galaxy Quest, it is obviously going parody, comedy, and sticking with... Mostly, it looks like it's riffing on Next Generation and the original series.
It's by Seth MacFarlane, though. So if you love Seth MacFarlane or if you hate Seth MacFarlane, you'll know what to expect.
Seth MacFarlane, for those who don't know, is a guy who made Family Guy and a lot of terrible movies. I mean, terrible in the sense that they have a lot of swearing and crass humor in them.
Well,
if you're into that, okay, maybe terrible's not the right word. If you're into that, fine, whatever. I'm not really into that.
Thanks for your judgment calls.
Whatever. Okay.
Live in a bubble.
But here's the thing. I'm kind of interested in both series for different reasons.
Was Seth MacFarlane in an episode? I don't remember that. Anyway, go ahead.
Orville, okay, parody. It brings back a lot of stuff you're interested in, like Galaxy Quest. It kind of pokes fun at what everybody already knows. You know, when people make fun of Shatner, you can tell. It's so obvious that you can tell, you know, what they're making fun of. Galaxy Quest obviously had the visual style of Next Generation, but the characters were based on the original series. And it looks to some degree they're doing that with the Orville, right?
Right.
Okay, so this seems like a good use of nostalgia in that they've got their own series and they can pretty much do what they want with it. I hope the writing is good and it's not just crass humor the entire time, because otherwise, you know, it's just a lame joke to me. It's just beating the same drum.
Most of the jokes in the trailer are decent.
Yeah, it looks okay. With Seth MacFarlane, I'm not entirely sure I want to watch it.
Apparently, he was in an episode of Enterprise. So, there you go.
Well, I wouldn't put that on his resume if I was him.
Here's something.
We'll get to Enterprise in a second. Go ahead.
Something random about Ready Player One is there's at one point where with the main character. Sorry, I'm going back to this again.
Does he mention Next Gen?
He's like, I was also a big fan of Star Trek, and he lists off all the series. You know, I was a big fan of the original series, because there's like 3 pages where he lists everything that he knows. It's not just like, I was a big fan of the 80s. I was a big fan of the 80s, including, and then like for 3 pages he lists all these things from the 80s. And you're supposed to it's supposed to make you excited, because then you're like, oh my gosh, I remember all these things too. Wait, this book is acknowledging parts of my childhood, therefore it's good.
Well, here's the thing. Talking about the 70s show really quick.
Enterprise shouldn't exist because the universe diverges in 1990 when this guy becomes a huge video game magnate, not a magnet. And he starts this big company which changes the world because everybody loves all of his games so much. But if that happened, then pop culture after the 90s should be completely different, which it kind of is, because he never mentions anything after the 90s, except for Star Trek series, and for some reason, The Lord of the Rings still got made. Sorry. Talk about Star Trek.
Okay. What I was saying, that 70s show, the 70s thing is what drove you in, but you stayed for the comedy, you know, because you knew it was a comedy show. Okay.
Right.
So instead of hitting you constantly with references, you know, it's like, we know what this is, and let's stay for the comedy, okay? Now, look over to Star Trek Discovery. One reason I'm interested in that is because it's a departure from the series that have been on television, right?
Uh-huh.
Today's special.
What?
I thought you said today's special, making an 80s
Spen's
reference.
just wondering if you've seen some sites, and then he realized that they weren't safe for work, and he was like, sorry.
Oh, okay. But this new Discovery, it looks action-based. I hope the writing's good. The dialogue looks kind of interesting, but it's hard to tell from the trailer so far because that series has run into a lot of production issues. So I'm hoping it's good, because I love Star Trek. And here's the thing, with the whole Star Trek series, there's been a lot of good and tons of really bad. I mean, as much nostalgia as you have for the original series and Next Gen, and not so much Deep Space Nine, I think, okay? Well, but especially Voyager and Enterprise, there's tons of really garbage episodes, okay? Tons and tons. But you want to keep watching it, hoping there's going to be a good episode, okay? So, let's talk. Next Gen kind of stuck with it started out trying to be the original Trek, and then luckily you got other writers branching off a little bit, and it did its own thing, and it worked for what it was trying to be. But let's talk about the 2 series that failed, I would say, in writing, and one that actually was canceled because it was bad.
Before we talk about that, I want to bring up something with Next Gen real quick.
Go ahead.
That relates back to nostalgia.
Okay.
Because you just said, Season 1 of The Next Generation was more or less trying to be the original series in a lot of ways.
And it's terrible.
And it's really bad. It needs to go away. Yes, you are correct, Spencer 359.
It's some of the worst episodes of Next Generation are the first season.
Right. Yeah.
Or of any Trek in general.
Basically of any TV show ever, because they're so sanctimonious about everything. And
you know, all the weird racism from the 60s and the sexism from the 60s are present.
Without the good characters that kind of leavened it, because they hadn't gotten established very well yet.
And Roddenberry wasn't allowing the characters to be as human as Kirk and Spock yet. Mm-hmm. And so the writers hadn't sunk their teeth into them because he had too much creative control.
It did have Tasha Yar. I like how you spelled it with 2 A's.
Yar.
Yar. I be the security chief.
Okay, that series was nostalgic, but where in the parts where it was trying to be too much like the original series, it failed. When it started to be its own thing and had its own, figured out its own pacing and figured out its own writing, it succeeded.
So the conclusion you might draw from that is, for something nostalgic to work, it needs to have more than just the nostalgia factor. It needs to also be able to stand on its own 2 legs. And that's kind of the point that I want to push, I suppose, during this stream, is that nostalgia is fine if it's a support. If it is the focus, and the support to the focus, the plot, character, story, whatever, isn't very good, then that's where I start having problems. And that was my problem with the book Ready Player One, is that it's so nostalgic, but the plot behind it was not interesting to me. It's something I'd seen a million times. Anyway, here's a random pirate joke for you.
Here it comes.
The one from chat said, "Have you seen the new pirate movie? It was rated R."
Terrible.
Here's what I heard the other day that I also like.
And no, I didn't watch the new Pirates.
What's a pirate's favorite letter?
R.
You may think it's R, but it's actually the C.
Is there a gun or a cutlass in this room?
No, my katana's in the other room.
Oh, okay. No, I mean like a pirate cutlass.
I don't have a pirate cutlass.
I'll just walk the plank.
All I have in this room is my Back to the Future Part 2 hat. Which, is it 80s or is it 2015? You
be the judge.
Call. Anyway, talk about Star Trek.
So all I was saying was 2 series that to me failed because they were trying too much to be like their predecessors is Voyager and Enterprise, okay? And we go back to Deep Space Nine. Okay, here's my experience with Deep Space Nine. It started out like Next Gen, essentially, except for that they were on the station. But they tried to do the Alien of the Week, the Weird Space Phenomenon of the Week thing, and they did that for a year or 2 or however many seasons. And then they got into the Dominion War, all right? And they kept going with that. And I and a lot of people, I still watch the series because I enjoyed, there was parts of the series I enjoyed. It did get frustrating because I didn't care that much about the war, and I was so used to, Next Gen, where there's something new, something new. But going back and rewatching, and especially talking with Jeff about it, I've gained a new appreciation because it became one of the first true serials before, 24 and Lost happened a few years later, where you really started caring more about the characters and their character, because they actually developed. The thing about Next Generation is they kind of developed, but it wasn't the focus. It wasn't about what was going on with the characters and more about their reactions to the situation, except for in the better episodes where, like let's say the best of both worlds, where Picard, I was going to call him Kirk for a second, Picard gets his entire body changed,
right,
and then it's huge about them, and then they still kind of brush it over later. He gets turned back into a human, but he had a whole episode after that where he's like, I want to quit and become an archaeologist like I always wanted to be. And he goes back to France, and that's a really good episode too. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with like starships or anything. It's about his character and him getting in a fight in the mud with his brother.
It's a very different episode too, which is kind of funny because I know a lot of Star Trek fans who hate that episode because they're like, there's no exploring and strange new worlds and civilization and whatever in that episode. It's just... And I'm like, well, that's fine, but it sure does give a nice insight.
Yeah, but there's so many other episodes you can go to for that instead. Why not we just have this one nice one that deals with his character? Anyway, you were saying.
The funny thing about Best of Both Worlds is that episode, that 2-parter, is completely... who's the focus of the Best of Both Worlds?
I would say Picard.
Nope. It's Riker.
What the?
The whole thing is all about Riker. The entire thing is about... hey, Alex, man. The entire thing is about Commander Riker not wanting to be a captain and then being forced to be a
That's right,
captain.
because of Shelby. Commander Shelby comes up and is trying to one-up him.
Commander Shelby's trying to one-up him, and then he's forced into being a captain, but he's like, how can I be a captain? I have to... Picard wrote the book on this ship. Lower away the book. Like, the whole entire thing is about Riker. And nobody remembers that because that show isn't about characters. Because that episode didn't change Riker after the episode was over. After the episode, you know, you take an episode from season 3 and you take an episode from season 4. Before and after this happened, and Riker's exactly the same in both episodes, even though he should be at least a little different.
Why didn't he go on to get his command? Not because he shouldn't have. It's because the showrunners wouldn't let him.
It's because he was the commander of the ship.
Yeah.
So...
Because it wouldn't be as familiar.
I'm not going to give the book leeway because it's his first book, Tim. That's not fair.
It's like saying Aragon was a great book.
Yeah. I bet he's written a lot of
Sorry
other
for
books
Aragon
that have never
fans.
been
I
published.
only made it through 3 chapters.
And he's about 50 pounds heavier in Enterprise, too. Jonathan Frakes.
Oh,
not
yes. Not Ernest
not
Cline.
Ernest Cline.
He probably is, too.
So that's... Anyway.
Yeah, well,
Which is
see,
a
that's
problem
the
with
problem.
Next Gen. It's just different.
The reset button with Next Gen, they wouldn't allow the characters to progress. And
Except for Worf.
Exactly. And you can argue that that's television for you. You know, they want to keep the characters the same so people keep coming back. And I'm going to segue into Marvel Comics really
Here
quick.
we go.
Here's the thing. We've had 70 years of superhero comics. No.
Wait, that's DC.
We've almost have... Next year we will have had 80 years of superhero comics because Superman in Action Comics #1 came out in 1938. All right? Okay. They don't let these characters progress, okay? Because they've been producing them every month or every week for so long that the backstories are so convoluted. People are, you know, they see Superman, they want to see the Superman that they've always seen without any changes whatsoever, okay? Superman, I'm using for an example. Or Iron Man or this and that. I love it when every 10 years or 5 years a writer... Go ahead.
Can you just do me a favor and throw that mic cable behind your shoulder? Because the fact that it's hanging off is why it's pulling off your face.
It is now, my dear. I mean, my friend. Okay. Tell me if you can hear me right. All right. Because I like it when every 10 or 5 years they shake things up. They kill off a character and he stays dead. Or they make the character, you know, leave the mantle or give it to somebody else, like the sidekick or something like that. When Batman steps down and lets Robin be Batman for a while. And I'm going to use an example from current comics unless you want to interrupt. Go ahead.
So what you're saying is, well, Spencer's asking, the Doodler is talking about knowing everything about the backstory in order to enjoy it. I don't know if that's the case. Tim says your level's good. I think what's with comics, the nostalgia is, it depends on what type of audience you're trying to appeal to, I think, what you're trying to build on. Because there are basically 3 fans of comics. One, the super casual fan who knows basically the pop culture osmosis things about Superman. He flies, Lois Lane, kryptonite. And then there's people who have read some comics and may have maybe seen like a TV show or two, and they know a fair amount. But they're not like super hardcore fans. And then you've got
there's the Doodler.
And then there's the Doodler who knows like, well, and then you got people who are arguing at comic book shops, people who know obsessive about all these details and get mad at you if you get them wrong when you write a new issue. And so the question is, when you make a movie or a new book, who are you trying to appeal to with those? And is there a problem with appealing to somebody outside the demographic that you normally would? Like, if you write a new comic, is it okay if you do a reboot because more people will buy it, because more people want to see the Superman they're used to? Or should you appeal to the super hardcore nerd who is obsessively being like, what? Dick Grayson would never do that, or whatever. Or are you trying to appeal to the person in the middle, which I think, which my personal opinion is that would probably be the best person to appeal to, because then you can tell good stories without getting bogged down in details, but at the same time, you can have your characters grow. like the new Star Trek movies have started to do. Sorry, I'm just reading chat real quick. You have to know everything to be a fan, but the rest will power media/movies. You have to appeal to the money. That's why there have been 100 reboots, is Spencer's opinion. Tim is saying he doesn't know that he likes that they kill off the characters every 10 years, since that isn't long enough to actually go into their story. So
Fair enough.
Fair enough. So, sorry, finish what you were saying.
So what I'm trying to say is, and maybe it's a problem with the serial/episodic format with a lot of these comics. I mean, you could say there've been episodes of these comics for 80 years, right? And they want to stay them the same because they know that it's going to sell, right? The same thing with a series, a TV series is going to last 7 years, you know. They don't want to. Sometimes they didn't want to do significant changes because they were afraid of alienating their fan base, right? I personally, the way I approach them is, I just want a well-written story with good characters, and if the character has to die and it makes sense for the character, not for a publicity event, but good, but good, what does that
good.
even, but I think that would, I like that a little bit better when actual change happens, because that story, I remember that a lot more. Okay, I'm gonna use for an example, and even even characters that I what.
Sorry, Spencer's saying he's 35, and I'm like, we're 34. We're almost 35.
Same age.
And he's saying you have to appeal to the masses. That's
well, yes, obviously, if you want
it to be like monetarily successful.
Right.
But that's not necessarily true.
But look at this. Look at The Walking Dead and things like that where they kill characters all the time.
Game of Thrones.
You can do it with good writing and it'll work. The problem is when you're dealing with a franchise or character that's been around for decades. That's where you run into issues, okay? But
Game of Thrones isn't a franchise. Game of Thrones is a story that's gone on for a long time, that's been plotted out, hopefully. So the character deaths are part of the thing. Like nobody's like, Jon Snow isn't like he was back in this other thing that I liked
back in 1882. But in 20 years
Song
when
of Fire and Ice.
20 years when they reboot it, people are going to be like, this isn't the same as what I enjoyed. Well, obviously, it's 20 years later with completely different, producers and actors and directors and everything.
Here's a random bit of trivia that I just learned from chat.
Here it comes.
Walking Dead's one of their main actors in season 1 was the shopkeeper in King's Quest 6.
Now we know.
Was he like the Jamaican guy, or was he like the book dude? That's the question. Anyway,
do we have to answer that?
I thought it was your question. I'm asking chat.
Oh, you're asking. I thought you were asking me.
No, I was asking Spencer.
You're asking the wrong guy, man.
You don't know your King's Quest 6
I don't
trivia?
even remember who that character is, dude.
No, he was like the guy who was like, "Good day, Prince Alexander."
Oh, I kind of remember now.
Now Cthulhu has eaten my pawn shop, or
That's
whatever.
Micro Machines.
Oh, right.
No, but let's take, for example, okay, when Guardians of the Galaxy came out just a couple years ago, I was really excited for it, and I enjoyed it a great deal. Okay. The problem is, now these 5 characters that I really cared for, everybody knows who they are and they want them to stay exactly the same, right? Okay?
Yeah.
That's the problem. When something goes mainstream, you're like, well, there goes the good writing, okay? Because
let's see Bruce Wayne's parents die again. Who wants to see Uncle Ben get shot again?
Oh my goodness. Anyway.
Anybody?
Well, yeah, and they keep redoing that too. But I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as the first one for a couple reasons. One, I felt too much nostalgia, too many references, too fast, all the time, okay, were happening. Like, when David Hasselhoff appears at one point, I won't tell you when, it's funny, but...
Your mic is sticking that way.
But they can still hear me, okay? It's funny, but I thought it took away from a very powerful scene, and it didn't need to be there. Like, they could have figured out somewhere to put it in a different part of the scene, okay?
I didn't have a problem with that, but that's just me.
Okay. The other problem I had with the movie is now we have just the 5 characters. When they rebooted Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics, 10 years ago, it was a changing roster, and they took all these characters that nobody cared about in the mainstream, and they could live and they could die and they could change. They completely changed the character of Drax. He's nothing like when he originally appeared in comics. I know you don't care about this, Jeffrey, but I'm getting to it. Hold on.
Okay, get to it quickly.
I'm getting to it.
Now we're turning into a comic book store argument.
I'm just using it as an example, okay? I'm using it as an example.
It is the pawn shop.
Okay. And now we're just stuck with those 5 characters that everybody likes. And, they can add here, but they're, are they going to actually kill anyone off? Except for Yondu, who isn't really a main character. They killed him because he was, expendable, okay?
He's Mary Poppins, y'all!
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's been all over the internet.
I know!
Okay.
So here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Good writing is what I'm looking for, whether it be Star Trek, Marvel Comics. I have a ton of interest, or whether it be Ready Player One, okay? I guess I didn't do enough analysis of the book, but I hadn't finished it yet.
I know. Well, and Will Wheaton narrates it because he's got to be... I've got issues with that.
One more plug for the comics before you get back to Ready Player One.
I keep getting hat hair every time I put that on.
Thor is a girl in the comics right now, okay?
Sure.
I don't care that he's a girl. I'm fine. Or she's a girl. It's not like he gender bended or something. It's a feminist woman as Thor. I was like, great, because the writer is the same writer who's been writing for the last 5 years on Thor, and his writing is really good. And the people who are upset because it's Thor and she's a woman and a feminist, I don't agree with. Because the stories are still just as quality, okay?
Okay.
And I take that with other characters, too. I want to see both these new series of Star Trek because I want to see if the writing's good. If it's terrible, I don't want to see them.
That's fine.
It doesn't have to do with nostalgia. I just want to see a good science fiction program.
Which is great.
And if it's Star Trek, too.
You've made the same point for the past 30 minutes.
I just repeat myself. You did the same thing with Ready Player One. It's just my turn to talk. Okay, go ahead. Also, I have a list of my Wikipedia article of all the things from the 80s that... I preempted that.
Yeah, I know.
I was catching it in my mouth.
When he infiltrates the evil organization, Ready Player One, I literally thought it was going to be like, the inside looked just like the Macintosh commercial from 1984, because that's how all of his other descriptions were like. This was... At some point, I was actually starting to... Like, when he goes that dance with that chick that he likes.
Artemis.
Yeah.
Or Artthremis.
Right. Because... I read something on the internet that's like, it's funny that all the pop culture references are from the 80s, but all of the internet lingo is from, like, 2004.
Well, that's the internet for you. They didn't have the internets in 1980s.
True, but it's all like sucksores and all this leet speak that I'm like, okay, is that even still a thing? I don't think it is. That was what 14-year-olds 15 years ago. So now I guess 29-year-olds or doing the math. Oh yeah, that checks out.
Will Wheaton says plebeian.
Will Wheaton's okay.
You were going to talk about Will Wheaton, why you had a problem.
I know my problem with Will Wheaton isn't with Will Wheaton. It's the fact that he somehow became king of the nerds, despite the fact that he's just an actor.
Well, it's like Chuck Norris. Why did Chuck Norris become famous? Because they latched onto one thing that was kind of popular and.
But I mean, to
made him a thing.
The point where I've mentioned, I'm like, I don't really like the book, but they're like, but the audiobook's read by Will Wheaton. Like that's somehow supposed to make the book better. It's like saying...
It does. He rewrites the plot as he's talking.
It's like saying, hey, I love that book, The Last Battle. I don't know about those mice characters, but Patrick Stewart reads it. Oh, I guess I have to like the book now.
You're just mentioning books that are read by Star Trek Next Generation characters.
And remember when Gates McFadden read Little Women? I don't know if that ever happened.
She's coming to Comic-Con.
A neighbor lives at 1337 and she didn't notice. Noob. Thanks for that. Tim's pet peeve, by the way, is Wolverine, who's smart, capable anti-hero with a mysterious backstory in the comics, but then they did a 180-degree turn a few years ago.
Yeah, well, he became so mainstream he had to be, a total badass. They turned him into the Punisher, essentially.
So,
you're saying?
Nostalgia.
Okay.
All of these things we've talked about, the Star Treks and the Marvels and the stuff, why... how does a book like Ready Player One, or I actually want to talk a little bit also about Scott Pilgrim.
Here it comes.
Because I
love that movie and that book series. Go ahead.
I saw that movie when it came out. I didn't know anything about the comics, didn't know anything about the movie. I was taken to it by a friend who's like, let's see Scott Pilgrim. And I'm like, that sounds like a movie.
The lamest thing I've ever heard. Oh, is it Pioneer Day? Why am I watching Scott Pilgrim? Is it the 4th of July?
No, it'd be more like Thanksgiving if you want to go Pilgrims.
I was thinking Pioneers.
Spencer359 wants to know...
I was thinking Scott Pioneer.
Do you have an opinion on the newest iteration of the Klingons in Star Trek Discovery?
Me personally or that man?
He's asking you because that's who he's asking. Like visually.
I think it's an interesting take. I think they look like just a different version of Klingons. And they're going for really focusing on the religion, it seems like, more than the warrior. Maybe going more towards their...
This we do not forgive! Oh, forget!
Maybe going more towards...
That's my Klingon.
Stuff I've read about it is when the Klingons and the Romulans were supposed to represent the Russians, okay? And the Klingons especially looked more Mongolian, is what they were going for. Now they're supposed to represent, modern things going on in the modern. I think they're going more for Islam. I think. But I'm not sure.
Footballs for helmets to me.
Say what?
Footballs for helmets. That's not what I meant to say at all. They look like their heads are football helmets, is what I was trying to say.
Well, they do have big foreheads.
They have and the ridges look a lot more like they're sewn up instead of just ridgy.
I wonder if I could still do it. I used to be able to make a Klingon forehead out of my own forehead, but I don't think I can do it. There we go.
Wolf! You are dishonored!
I liked in Next Gen when they fleshed out the culture more and they made them more Viking-esque. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And I like how they are in Star Trek 6.
They had pink blood.
Mostly because it's Christopher Plummer and David Warner.
That's Christopher Plummer for you, always with the smooth talk. Anyway, you were saying we've descended into our comedy act and gotten off the...
Carl says we're weird.
That's why people watch us, man.
That's why we're the number one on Twitch right now.
That's Carl's new catchphrase. He tells me that every day.
You two are weird?
That I'm weird.
Oh, I thought he thought you were two people, and that was his catchphrase.
You two are weird.
Oh, it's a good scene in the movie, the pink blood scene. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Something about Star Trek or
Will Wheaton?
No, it was after that.
He asked about Klingons. I was saying...
Maybe I'll...
Here's the thing. I'm fine with a little bit of visual changes. Like, I didn't care that much that they changed the visuals in the Kelvin timeline movies and the recent Star Trek movies.
Kelvin, where's he? He hasn't watched in a while.
I don't know. He's out taking care of his timeline. Or his centigrade degrees. But here's the deal.
Terrible.
I just wanted them to be well written and interesting. I just want the Klingons in the new series to be interesting. Like, one of the most interesting things about Next Gen and Deep Space Nine was the Klingons because they fleshed out their culture so well.
And that Lursa and Bator, hubba. Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. Something about
the House of Duras.
Something about the House of Duras.
And your house.
I think Spencer has a crush on you.
He's sick. I mean, hey, I'm sorry.
Yes, they are dead. They got blown up in generations.
Thank goodness.
No. Okay, now I got to remember what I was saying. Something about nostalgia. Scott Pilgrim. That's what it was.
Yes, Scott Pilgrim.
There we go.
You should have reminded me. I would have brought... Well, you have a book of him here.
I do.
Here
It's
too.
somewhere. I have no idea where it is, though.
What about Scott Pilgrim? Let's discuss Scott Pilgrim.
Scott Pilgrim was... So I went and I saw it. I had no idea what it was going to be.
And you told me to go see it.
And I did tell you to go see it.
You took me to go see it.
Because I like, when it started and it played, like, the first thing you hear in the movie is the opening strains from Link to the Past. Like the doo-loo-loo-loo-loo-loo, you know?
Yeah, it says somewhere in Toronto, or
in
2004 Toronto.
Right, something like that. And I wasn't expecting that at all, because I was expecting it to be just like some movie that, whatever.
About Thanksgiving.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it's something I recognize. It's so cool. And then the whole thing was like super crazy with all these references. But it wasn't just references for the sake of references. Some of them were.
Yeah.
Most of the Zelda stuff actually kind of was.
Yeah, why is it Zelda? It didn't have to be Zelda. It could have been anything else.
Right.
Like when they play the Great Fairy theme, the Fairy Fountain theme, I mean.
Right.
Speaking of which.
Tim didn't like Scott Pilgrim. Because it wasn't aimed at his demographic, maybe?
I don't know.
The thing with Scott Pilgrim, though, is...
The characters are so interesting, and they're all terrible jerks. They're the worst people ever, and they're so great to watch just be total jerks to each other the entire time. Scott is the worst ever.
You know, the funny thing is, the first time I saw that movie, I was kind of in the mode where I was like, I can totally relate with Scott. And then...
Yeah, we were 20... You and I were 20-somethings with our lives not going anywhere.
And now we're 30-somethings with our lives not going anywhere.
Well, except now more people know about it.
Well, the thing was... I have kind of this love-hate relationship with Scott Pilgrim because I loved it so much, and then I kind of, I identified it with a little too closely, and then as I got older, I realized that Scott was a jerk, and that all these people were terrible, terrible people.
So great!
And then I'm like, so I kind of have personal feelings mixed up with Scott Pilgrim. But here's the thing, though. When he's like, and it's got some... of those nostalgic references, like the fact that at one point he's like, hey, I can play the bass line from Final Fantasy II, and like they're like, and we're called Launchpad McQuack. That's not the name of the song. You know, and Sex Bob-omb is obviously a Mario. You know, there are all these random references. So why is... So I guess I'll ask Tim, why is that not okay with Scott Pilgrim, but it's so great with Ready Player One? And I'll ask myself the opposite.
May I answer too? Or
you can also answer, although you like both of these things, so I don't know what the...
My answer would be the characters are more compelling, the dialogue is more interesting, and the foundation is how the characters interact with each other. Those are just icing on the cake, like the little references there. Mm-hmm. But, in fact, the movie Scott Pilgrim... You know, you got the ending part where more action happens and more of the CGI. I actually enjoy the first half of the movie where it's just this weird indie romance between them two.
Where it's just Michael Cera. They turned the camera on him and said, be the character you are and everything.
Yeah, and he's just such a clueless loser. And that's exactly the same as he is in the book, too. But they are riffing directly off old video games in the sense of you're this loser in these games like River City Ransom.
Right.
But somehow you can beat all the bad dudes for no reason. And most people they continue to point out what a terrible person he is. Right. But he ends up, you know, he's not as bad as the actual bad guys. He's just not a good person himself either. No,
the only good person in the entire movie is probably, other than like off in the distance, like
Knives.
I mean, she's a little obsessive, but that's because she's a teenage girl. But she's at heart a good person, and at the end, she's definitely like, you two weirdos go off together. I'm going to get myself like a normal person to date. So, Spencer's trying to censor himself again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I said that kind of because there's just Carl, and he's just calling us weird.
That's all he does.
That's
not all he does.
But some would argue that don't like that movie, that the characters are shallow and selfish, and that's like bad because who wants their protagonist to be a jerk? And
but they're intentionally shallow. It's not like Ready Player One where he's a good guy, but he actually is. You know, it's like the writer went in with intelligence, knowing he's writing a terrible person.
The difference is this: Scott Pilgrim is a jerk. But he is at least a little more complex. Wade, what's his name?
Wade Watts.
Thank you. Sorry.
I thought you read this book. No, I'm telling you all the things from it.
Stanley, it must be a Stanley reference because his name is alliterative.
No, he even says at the beginning of the book that his dad named him to sound like a superhero. Specifically Deadpool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll talk about Deadpool later.
Speaking of Mary Sue's, Carl, weird is spelled E-I. If you want to keep calling us weird, spell it right.
Otherwise, we're wired, which we are, and it keeps falling off my face.
Ding.
Oh, and wired on Big Oaks.
I'm drinking redness.
You don't need any more red in you.
Tim, I was also active on the internet in the 90s. I was active on I had Prodigy in 1992. I was like 10 years old, but anyway. I don't know, Spencer.
What's his question?
He's...
Oh, never mind.
Something about joining the Maquis. I'm not sure.
No references. This is not a stream about references. It's about good writing and character work.
So, have any of you, and I know I've shown him a couple of views, and you don't like this guy, but you're talking
the guy
like...
with the glasses?
No, not the guy with the glasses.
Oh, the top of the fourth wall?
Not that guy either. Confused Matthew.
Oh. I liked his newer reviews where he's not so angry and weird.
Confused Matthew. I want to talk about this for a second.
I loved his Batman v Superman review.
Yeah.
Because it was everything I had said. But maybe that's just pandering to
AOL
to
trial diskette. I love it.
America Online.
Confused Matthew is an internet critic I watched a while ago, and his gimmick, he didn't intend for this to be a gimmick, but it ended up being one, was that he was reviewing movies that people loved and that he was confused why they loved them because they were terrible. And the first one he did that really took off was The Lion King, which is a movie that he says it's gorgeous, it's got some good songs, but the plot, the characters, and the screenplay are all total garbage. Not total garbage. That's not quite as bad. But like, there are some serious problems that he has in that movie.
They're not what everyone expects them to be.
And he's just
same problem I have with Frozen.
And he's just, I actually liked Frozen, but he's just confused about why people love it so much, because it's got the issues such as Simba is a complete and total a-hole for the first third of the film. Not just a delightful little scamp, but like deliberately objectively a terrible child. Who never goes through a redemption story, because the second and the third parts of the film have nothing to do with who Simba was. Like the whole moral about running away from responsibility and all that is, I don't know the answer to that question, Spencer, has nothing to do with the fact that Simba was a jerk. So why do we have to watch Simba be a jerk? And also, Timon and Pumbaa are the best Disney villains. Because they
try to keep Simba from doing what he's supposed to do.
Right.
Which is the right thing.
Right. So anyway, I'm not going to talk about The Lion King. You can go watch the Confused Matthew thing.
Goodness.
But the thing is, his focus is always on it, and for a while he didn't like the Marvel movies. Now he's warmed up to them a little bit more now that they've come up with some better runs. But at the time it was like the first two Iron Man movies and some other stuff that he was like, all these movies are terrible because they're focusing so much on setting up a universe, they're not telling a good story. But that's the thing, is the nostalgia. Ideally, if I want to be a snob, the nostalgia doesn't matter as long as you've got a good characters and a good story. And if you don't have a good characters or a good story, then the rest falls apart, right? That's how it should be, right? Right?
Oh, are you asking me?
I'm asking everybody.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'm letting everybody answer.
Tim, I'm not talking about the part where Mufasa died. I'm talking about everything before that, when he's just can't wait to be king and he does the elephant graveyard thing and all that stuff. That part definitely has to do with the rest of the movie. It's the stuff before that doesn't. Anyway, he was just nitpicking the Lion King thing. Actually, Tim, go watch that and then argue with Doodler about it tomorrow. Don't do it now though, because we're doing a vlog.
We're still talking.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, I would argue, that nostalgia's great and it's icing on the cake, but you want to see characters progress and change. Otherwise, why watch them? I have noticed as I've watched the Marvel movies, I do watch them because I've cared about these characters for years, and I want to see them progress and do things. I really like it when they make nods to the comics or things I understand, but a lot of them have been, like what the internet parlance is, passable movies. They're fine, but they're not great, okay? They're not life-changing movies. They're not making, Chariots of Fire here. They're just making stuff that people are going to like, okay? And they do have some good moments.
You spelled it right, Carl. Yay!
Huzzah!
Everybody give the Carl a pat on the back.
Anyway, and
didn't
I'm
spell you
hoping,
right, though.
but it's the same reason why I want to see these new Star Trek things, because
Feel the love tonight.
they've surprised me and interested me in the past, and I'm hoping they will do it again. And the Marvel movies, I don't think have done that as much. I'm hoping at some points they will. I mean, some of them have been downright bad, like the Hulk film and Iron Man 2, where I was just like, whoa. And I didn't really care for Ant-Man because I didn't think... It had a lot of jokes and a lot of references, but it was just a rehash of Iron Man. Okay, it was exactly the same thing as the first Iron Man.
I had a problem when I saw Deadpool.
Let's talk about Deadpool. That's good. You talk about Deadpool,
Okay,
then I'll talk about
I'm going to talk
Deadpool.
about Deadpool the movie because I don't know the comics at all. But I saw the movie, and my biggest problem with the movie is lots of people love that movie. I am confused player on the issue of Deadpool. CGAs for the Lannisters.
I don't understand any of those words.
Tim, I don't like the Transformers movies either. Why are you citing things that prove my point?
Yes, Transformers is a good example. Terrible writing, terrible stupid characters, the worst dialogue ever. But here's the thing. It generally looks cool to a regular audience. And I don't think it looks that cool because I've seen much better CGI in other places.
And you can't say that Ready Player One is good because another movie is bad. That's not an argument. That's like saying, this apple tastes a little rotten. Oh yeah? Well, Hitler exists. I know CGA the graphic setting. It's 4 colors. It's puke blue, puke purple, black, and white.
Isn't it cyan, green, and...
It's cyan, magenta, and black and white. The Lannisters from Game of Thrones. Gotcha.
Okay. You were saying about Deadpool the movie.
I was saying about and maybe it's because people have been hyping him up so much, and also because of the wonderful things he does.
No, terrible things he does.
Because I spent a lot of time on the internet, which is all about meta humor. Most of his humor was stuff that I didn't particularly find funny per se, as just kind of like, okay, he's kind of what's the word?
Jerk?
Not just a jerk, because Scott Pilgrim was a jerk.
Yeah. Lovable Scott Pilgrim.
And Scott Pilgrim also had tons of breaking the fourth wall jokes. But the problem is that
it feels like it feels like the movie is about that.
He is so like it felt like a lot of the humor was punching down. If you know what that term means.
Explain.
There's a term in humor that I've learned kind of recently. It's about punching up and punching down. And this was actually in reference to the PewDiePie recent thing that happened recently. Why that wasn't really funny. Well, for several reasons. And I'll explain what that is in a second. But first, let me explain punching up and punching down. Usually humor is based on pain. Based on somebody else going through something hard and you laugh at it. Whether it's suddenly, pow!
I caught a bullet in my teeth.
Or something unexpected happens and you're like, that's weird.
Squiggle.
So, and it's usually much more funny if you're punching up, which means that like people on late shows making fun of politicians, because politicians have a lot of power and they can make you do terrible things. And so kind of the way to fight back is to make fun of them, to make them not seem like these uber powerful people, but to make them seem more like normal people, or at least
like flawed.
Flawed people. That's partly better for it. Or like your like hackney jokes about airplane food or whatever. We all have to deal with these dumb things in life, so let's laugh about them because they're caused by things outside of our control.
Right.
You know, like terrible airplane food or whatever. So punching down is an anti-feminist term.
Is it breaking through the glass ceiling? You're punching so hard, these glass shards are falling on the women below you.
I'm not sure what that means.
Didn't Trump say all the women should be up on top of the glass ceiling and we should be down below them? Looking up.
That's
never mind.
Yeah, no, I get the joke.
I don't know if it was Trump. It was probably somebody else.
That's
making fun of Trump.
Terrible. Okay, excuse me. I don't want to go into the religion thing either, especially.
Thank goodness.
But punching down is when you make fun of people that are less powerful than you or that have had harder times than you, which is why. And
like going out and punching a hobo in the face or something.
Yeah, it might be kind of funny.
It's like that guy on the street. No, there's a guy on the street that says anything will help, and I always wanted to run out and be like, "Oh yeah, does this help? Does this?" See, that's an example of terrible things.
Yeah, but the funny thing about that isn't that the hobo is in pain. The funny thing about that is that you're a terrible person.
And you can recognize that I'm a terrible person.
And we're laughing at the fact that you're terrible, not at the fact the hobo's in pain, unless you are also a terrible person and laughing at this painful hobo. Punch a hobo is apparently a hashtag, by the way.
And I'm not actually going out and punching a hobo, you know.
That you know of.
Well, I hope not.
But like, okay, so the thing with PewDiePie, if you don't know PewDiePie, he's a streamer. And if you don't know PewDiePie, then
don't look into him.
You probably do. Who doesn't know PewDiePie that's also watching Twitch?
I don't know.
Except for Tim, I guess.
Yeah.
He's a streamer who basically became the #1 channel on YouTube for a long time, and he has like 50 million subscribers, and he's made millions of dollars, and he even had like a contract with Disney. That's how big he got. He was on Colbert once for some reason. and if you watch his earlier stuff especially, he's just playing terrible horror games and shrieking at them. But he has, and I don't really like him, but he's got a big fan base for some reason because he's kind of like laid back and he's like, "Hey, brah, let's play this video game, y'all. Punch my fist, brah.
Punching down.
Punch." No, the controversy happened. You, Seth, in Enterprise. The controversy happened. This feels like deja vu. Did I explain this in the other vlog? I might have.
No, I haven't heard of this. That's why I'm listening.
So
otherwise, I wouldn't be listening.
Right. Sorry, I punched down to you, Tim. Jim.
His problem is
Jim.
Tim's down through that glass ceiling.
He's trying to break through that glass ceiling and win a Micro Machines. That posted yesterday, the Super Nintendo one.
You won half the time.
Yeah, that's true. He won more than you did.
Well, I didn't win at all. I'm not good at that game.
There you go. Still's fun though. The controversy with PewDiePie is there was a I don't remember what it's called, but there was a service that was being done by two dudes in India on the internet that were like, if you pay us like $50 or something, we will write whatever you want on a sign and hold it up and do a goofy little dance and post it on the internet. It was just a dumb thing that these two guys in India were doing for $50.
Just making some money or whatever.
Just making some money, just, goofy internet stuff, whatever. And so, PewDiePie had him write down, I don't remember the exact phrase, but it was basically, "Death to the Jews."
Wow.
Yeah. And these Indian guys who don't really know what the Jews are because they live in India and it's not really part of their daily life, wrote down "Death to the Jews" and dumped around with it like a goofballs.
That's bad funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bad in that it's so terrible.
No, it's terrible. And then the internet, like, completely divided in half over this issue.
Wow.
Yes. It completely...
I thought I felt something happen recently. PewDiePie, with the power of Moses, splits the internet in half.
Because the mainstream media picked up on this. Like, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about it, even, and, like, some other like actual legit news organizations about how this weird internet celebrity did this terrible thing, and as a result, he lost a lot of his funding. He lost his deals with Disney, and it was a Fiverr thing. I think it was a Fiverr thing. That has nothing to do with the actual part of the story. But he lost a lot of his deals, and a lot of people are like, you don't do that. Especially, he's Swedish. He's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed.
He looks like Gordon Hayward.
He looks like Gordon Hayward. He does. He was a basketball player.
For the Utah Jazz.
Well,
it used to be.
Used to be.
He's now with the Celtics.
He just got transferred. Him and Larry Bird can hang out and play against Dr. J.
Larry Bird hasn't been on the Celtics in years.
Well, his jersey's probably still hanging up.
Oh, of course it is. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Anyway.
He runs the Indiana Pacers. Go ahead.
Basketball. And so, but then there are a lot of people on the internet, they're like, no, because the point of the joke isn't death to Jews. The point of the joke is that
it's absurd.
That it's so absurd that that's somehow funny. But the problem isn't just death to Jews, because you can say death to Jews and have it be funny if you're Mel Brooks.
Because he's a Jew.
And a lot of Jewish people think that Jewish jokes are hilarious because they can make them. Spencer 359 is apparently Jewish, and he thought it was hilarious. So,
well, hey, it's so good to have you on our stream.
Hey.
It's so great. I hope you voted for what's his name, that loud guy.
What?
What's it? Who?
You know, he drives that blue car.
Bernie Sanders. I was trying to make a Bernie Sanders joke. I'm sorry, Spencer.
I hope you voted for that one guy. He had those ideas.
I couldn't think of his name. I didn't vote for him. And it wasn't because he was Jewish or not Jewish. It was because I didn't agree with his policies.
That's just one of the funniest things I've heard.
Sorry,
I voted for that guy.
I've been reading a lot of Simpsons jokes lately. And there was a Jewish couple.
I thought I was a self-hating Jew. Turns out I'm just an anti-Semite.
Terrible.
Anyway, that was from the episode where Krusty thought he wasn't Jewish.
I'm sorry if I offended you, Spencer. I went into a this is my Jewish voice. Jewish comedian.
It was just weird.
I couldn't think of anything. The problem is, I couldn't think of his name.
Now you're just Howard Cosell. The problem is, I couldn't think of his name.
Isn't that anger?
Development. No, that's Lewis Black.
Oh, I can't remember.
Howard Cosell's an old sportscaster.
Let's get ready to rumble.
He thinks it's funny.
Oh, thanks.
Anyway, the problem was also the fact that these poor Indian boys,
they probably got ridiculed, and
they received a lot of the brunt of this. What are you writing on these signs thing? And they were like these poverty-stricken people.
How old were they?
They were like probably I don't know if they're teenagers or early 20s, but they were younger, probably like college age-ish. We get free Jew joke passes for the next 4 years.
Us?
Apparently.
Yeah!
It's official now.
Huzzah! Huzzah!
I'm Danish and English. I don't know if that's Jewish at all.
Sorry, do you like Zoidberg? Hey,
Zoidberg.
Spencer, do you like Zoidberg? I love Zoidberg. Quick thing. I recently have watched some Isaac Asimov things, and he sounds exactly like Zoidberg. His voice sounds exactly. I'm sorry. I hope you're an Asimov fan. I hope we got some Asimov. I know Tim loves Asimov.
No robot should harm me. Muzzle. I don't know.
That's the worst Zoidberg I've ever heard.
I wasn't trying to be Zoidberg. I was trying to be Isaac Asimov.
No, you sounded like Homer. You sounded like the original Homer Simpson. Well, let's take around and play some football.
Get some frosty chocolate milkshake.
I bet you, isn't Dan Castellaneta Jewish? I don't know.
We've gotten so far from nostalgia. This is great.
Okay, what were you talking? Deadpool. You were talking about Deadpool, I think.
I want to finish with PewDiePie. Okay. The problem is that these two Indian kids who were just trying to make money pretty much kind of got shut down. And they were the source of a lot of ridicule and problems.
Probably death threats.
And they were just two people just trying to make some extra bucks in an economy in a country where they were just trying to Carl's telling us to shut up.
Thanks.
In an economy where you're just trying to make a living, just doing a goofy thing on the internet, and suddenly you're the target. So that was that was the other half of his punching down thing, was that he was taking these people that were in far worse circumstances than he
It's like
and making fun of them.
Like a bully at school who, pulls your pants down in front of everybody and laughs at you and then knocks your books out of your hands.
Right.
And kicks them across the hallway.
And even though...
That's kind of funny now that I'm thinking of. It's funny in if you see it on a sitcom. It's not funny when it happens to you or you do it to somebody in real life.
That's the thing, is, if that happened in a sitcom, because on some level that it's just actors being stupid. But when it happens in real life, like if you're actually at school and somebody pulls down somebody else's pants and knocks his book, and it's some bully and he just laughs at him, and the bully's like,
there's some things you don't do in real life. I mean, you have cartoon and television, and then you have real life.
If there was a show where a PewDiePie analog made Indians dance to Death to Jews, that might be funny.
Probably have done it on The Simpsons, I would assume.
It sounds more like a Seth MacFarlane joke to me.
Or that, too.
But when it actually happens...
But when there's actual consequences to that act, real-life consequences, it's different.
People are actually being hurt. And that's the funny thing about the internet losing its collective mind over this, is that there are people on both sides of the issue.
Consequences, I want to talk about that once you're done.
Unless you see it on video. It's not funny in high school unless you watch it later on video. And that's more catharsis.
Here's another
catharsis
thing.
Humor.
Speaking of that, it's related.
Okay.
American Idol. I got really sick of that show for the first parts when they would bring in, when you see the bad people, the people who are bad at singing, okay?
Right.
And I was like, you guys are sitting here and just harassing and ridiculing these, a lot of them seem mentally ill and incredibly tone deaf, and just making fun of them. And I was like, this is such low humor. I stopped watching the show
Punching
because
down.
of that. Exactly. I'm like, these people don't know any better. They think they're good singers because they're tone deaf or mentally ill.
Or they've just, people have told them they're great because they want to build their self-esteem.
Right. And you got Simon Cowell here telling them that they're the worst people alive and just crushing them as people. I'm like, no, this is bad. This is wrong. I'm sorry. Sorry for American Idol fans, but I don't like that kind of humor.
So Deadpool.
Right.
Let's rewind a bit. Get back past all the Jew jokes.
Oh, that can never be taken back.
Hey, get some picnic baskets. That's the voice that you were doing.
No, I was doing Bernie Sanders. Oh, I can think of his name. I didn't vote for him. Duh!
You're using up all of our Jew joke passes.
Sorry, we got 4 years of them. Look, I'm doing my Wolverine hair because we're talking. It doesn't work right. Wait and see me when I wake up, then you'll see my Wolverine hair.
Well, and Spencer does come up with a good point about American Idol, which is people will do anything to get on TV.
There's that too. They're willing to be ridiculed.
And I think, a lot of these people.
But it teaches people that it's okay to make fun of people who are less fortunate than you, less talented than you. And that bullying is okay. And I have a big problem with that. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, it's like somebody saying, yeah, Mr. Bully, I'll let you pour this on my head and humiliate and dehumanize me.
Well, I
don't think that's right either.
Let's relate it back to nostalgia by bringing up one of the elephants in the room that I haven't brought up yet.
Here it comes.
And
Is it me?
It's not you.
I'm the elephant in the room.
Because I'm a big fat gray thing.
I'm blue. What's wrong with you?
Dabu-dee-dabu-die.
Stop it.
No, the thing I want to bring up was everybody's favorite show, but nobody's favorite show.
Applebee's.
The Big Bang Theory.
Here it comes.
The show that nobody admits to liking, but is still the best, the highest rated show on TV for some reason.
Because what else is there?
Because the Big Bang...
For sitcoms, I mean.
The Big Bang Theory is the worst type of nerd pandering. Other than maybe Ready Player One, they might be on the same level.
They might be giants.
They might be giants, because the Big Bang Theory is saturated with nerd culture, but it's not celebrating nerd culture. It's laughing at nerd culture. I don't even know what I'm saying. I've had a little too many gulps.
Saying, look at how nerdy and dumb these guys are.
The punchlines are, we're nerds.
We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Ha ha ha! Who does that? Nerds, right?
Yeah. Jim Parsons, he said something weird. Ha 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 ha! He's a mentally ill individual that probably should get some help. Look, guys, they said Green Lantern. I recognize that from that nerdy guy that I pushed over in high school.
Look at who's the main guy? Howard?
No, the main
he's a
guy's
Sheldon.
Leonard.
Leonard, that's it. Yeah, and he ends up with Penny not because he should or they have anything in common, but because we feel sorry for him and he's the protagonist.
Because they end up together because they're the leads. Here's the thing. You're not supposed to relate to the nerds. You're supposed to relate to the Penny character because she's the one who's given all the punchlines.
She's the normal
Somebody
one.
says something nerdy and she's like, okay, honey, that was weird. Like, because that's what the audience should be thinking. And that's what a lot of the audience is thinking. Because it's appealing to the lowest common denominator. And I'm not saying that if you think the Big Bang Theory is funny, that you're the lowest common denominator.
Except for maybe Tim.
Except for maybe...
He's my brother. I am allowed to say it.
You're punching up because he's an older brother, right?
He's a lot bigger than me, more powerful.
Pete Holmes playing D&D was hilarious, though. When was that? I'm not that. There have been a couple of D&D episodes. The one
No,
that
the
really,
D&D is fine. It's that the punchline of one joke was, we're playing Dungeons & Dragons. Ha 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 ha! You guys are nerds. It wasn't... The punchline was that they were playing Dungeons & Dragons. Not that there was anything inherently funny about that.
And so
but that anyone who plays Dungeons & Dragons is inherently funny and ridiculous.
Penny doesn't even have a last name. Or does she?
It's money. It's Penny Money.
I think that's a Bond girl.
No, that's Money Penny. You're getting that confused.
It's like the difference Big Sky Garage is saying between the Big Bang Theory and IT. Like the IT crowd, I'm assuming that you're talking about.
Yes.
Which the IT crowd is a great show.
Dude, use the example for the dinner party.
Which one? You've got a beautiful skull.
Yes. Okay, so I'll say
episode.
I'll say it. Jen is supposedly the normal person,
I see
beautiful
what you're
person, but she's just as weird as the other guys too, and she's got a lot of problems too. And it's not just about them being nerds, but she invites these three weirdos over, who are the main characters, along with her, over to her dinner party, and she's like, you can hang out with my friends that are normal. Her friends are just as weird and awkward as them. It's just that she happens to not consider them that way because they're girls.
Tim's on his phone.
And
That's
she's
why
used to them.
That's why all of his comments are like spaced out. I thought that was you, Tim, but it was just weird that you're spacing things. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Just the dinner party. And I don't know, possibly because it was a British show.
Well, and I think British comedy in general lends itself more to showing the uglier sides of things.
Right.
Like,
because they're not very good-looking people. Is that what you're trying to say about?
Well,
British people?
my largest part of my heritage is English, so I
thought
will
you were
say
going to say
that.
the largest part of your forehead is English. It is not. It is definitely Danish.
Danish is second, but it's like they're like neck and neck in my
look
percentage.
so much more Danish than you look
I
English.
know I look more Danish.
I look English. Or Irish.
I know I look
with
Danish.
some Native American in there.
I should, because I've got a lot of, I'm going to say it wrong now.
Chutzpah.
Higgy.
It's pronounced hooga.
We all have those friends that only like weird people. I am that friend. All of my friends are weirdos.
Right.
Like that guy.
Ah! I'm not weird. I'm wired. Haven't you been reading
that's right.
Carl?
No, Carl says we're boring with about 1,000 G's.
That's a lot of G's.
I know. That
That's
means
more G's than I got
could
in my crib.
We could buy so many chocobos with that much G.
I could buy Casa del Sol.
I could buy the
Or Villa del Cloud, or whatever it was in Final Fantasy VII.
Armageddon-mobile. What is that airship called? Ragnarok.
The Invincible, or the Ragnarok, yeah. The
Armageddon.
Armageddon-mobile. Boy, Squaresoft, you really let yourself go. Now we'll fight evil bad man guy,
Evil
Saroth.
bad people.
Bad guy Saroth.
Deadpool punches down. Deadpool makes fun of people that aren't as powerful as he are.
Which is most people. He is.
He does a lot of fourth wall jokes, which are lazy, I think. We should hang out with Spencer because we're all weird.
Thanks.
They're kind of lazy jokes, and maybe this is because when I was a teenager, I read a lot of fanfic. I did. I'm just gonna say it.
You wrote a lot of fanfic.
I wrote 2 things. One of them was a parody of the 2000 election with Chip and Dale.
Wasn't the other one a Chippendale?
The other one was also Chippendale, and it was. I went to. Okay, I wrote a fanfic when I was like 16, where I went to the Chippendale Rescue Rangers headquarters, and it was supposed to be a spoof of these self-insert fanfics, where like a new character joins the team, and they're like the coolest thing ever, and everybody loves them. The credits were cool. And I did actually like the credits for Deadpool. And I totally get shut down by the Rescue Rangers. Like, they're just like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm cool. You should have me part of your team. I'm Jeff.
Let me join your team.
I drive my mother's car. It's over there.
I'm really glad you wrote this when you were 16. That makes me happy. And not like 8 when you wrote this.
Right. So here's a bit of a here'll give me some internet cred maybe. If you go to fanfiction.net and go to the Chippendale Rescue Rangers section, go to the very oldest page. That's where my stories are. Like not the oldest story on there, but like one of the oldest, like 10 out of the like 3,000 or whatever that's on there now.
You had your own Chippendale website.
Ross Perot through 92.
Ross Perot isn't Bernie Sanders. Throw your vote away.
No, the 2001 I wrote. Go read it. It's the oldest one on fanfiction.net on the oldest
no
page.
Rangerillion, but it's okay.
Mr. Kerr, that was my username back then, and it still is.
Deadpool.
So all that fourth wall stuff is stuff that is very common in fanfic, because a lot of people write fanfic where they think it's funny that the characters are talking to a narrator that's making them do stupid things. Where they're like, and then Chip did this thing. He's like, do I have to do that? And the narrator's like, you do what I say because I'm the narrator. And that's like half the humor of a lot of fanfics. It's a thing, I guess. I don't know. But I'm sorry. Good part, Grimlock want good part, is what Carl has just said.
That's from Transformers 1986. Speaking of references that they're just out of nowhere.
References. Let's let's get off of Deadpool for a second.
But because I wanted to talk about Deadpool.
Deadpool has not much. Well, we can get back to Deadpool in a second with nostalgia stuff, but I want to talk about references for a second.
Here it comes.
References are okay when the joke is still clear if you don't know the reference, or if the reference joke makes sense within context and isn't crucial to understanding the crux of the scene, I think. So, excuse me. If somebody makes a joke that's just a reference to something, and you don't know that reference, then your inside joke is left out, and you're like, what are you good luck, good part, Grimlock, what is that? But if you get the inside joke, then you're like, that's great. This is not Leisure Suit Larry 4. That doesn't exist. Sorry. I'm just reading chat.
Tim says, one Sierra series we will not be playing.
Well, Leisure Suit Larry 4 is a game that didn't happen. Like, this series goes from 3 to 5. It's kind of a joke. Because Leisure Suit Larry 4, if you remember our Space Quest 4 stream, contains a virus that makes Volhall take over the world. So that was kind of a weird Sierra in-joke there.
That is pretty weird.
You were talking to my sister over that part, so you didn't actually hear that joke
I
ever
probably
happen.
heard it and didn't care.
Tim saying Deadpool's lowbrow Wolverine.
Essentially.
Problem with Deadpool is that his character doesn't have a whole ton of depth to it, because his character is so busy making jokes
and talking about how cool
he is, that he's not a person. He is a collection of jokes. He is the artist winking at the audience through a character who isn't his own character. I think that's probably what you're going to say, but go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Well, yeah, and just with the character himself. One of those characters that are so overpowered that they can never really have, character change or any consequences to their actions. when you can like pretty much resurrect yourself or reanimate yourself from almost any injury, you know, it just loses all believability. There's no stakes with Deadpool. Nothing that might happen to him. You know he's going to win every outcome and just be yelling nonsense the entire time, okay? And he never shuts up. I know that's the point. You know, he's the merc with the mouth. But you can have a talkative character where, who's actually funny. But I'm of the opinion that more talking does not make more humor, okay?
Well, that was the point of, I just watched the Red Letter Media review of the new Ghostbusters, which is a great review, better than the movie, I think. You know nothing, John Doodler.
Is that Carl?
That was Spencer 359.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry if you're a Deadpool fan, okay? Listen, I've been a Marvel Comics fan, and I used to love Deadpool when he was still a character and not whatever he is now. Okay, here's one thing. Recently, I've been reading The Uncanny X-Force, which was a series that came out about 2 years ago. And it has a really good writer named Rick Remender. The series is for mature audiences, so I do not recommend it for
non-mature audiences.
Because there is a lot of violence in it. But he takes Deadpool and he makes him part of a team, and he still talks a lot. He's still very annoying. But he's not always annoying. Sometimes he does make points. Sometimes he makes him into a character you actually start to care for. I started to care for Deadpool because he was written so well in this story, and he's not the focal point of the team, okay? Mm-hmm. I like that kind of character when he has his moments and he's used correctly, but not when that starts becoming what this movie or what this thing is about. I will use 2 examples.
Here it comes.
Olaf from Frozen, I can't stand. Okay, because he's brain dead and he just talks too much. Same thing. Well, I'll use 3 examples. Hey from Moana, brain dead character who you're laughing at, not laughing with, and he's a liability to everything. Jar Jar Binks, same as Deadpool. Okay, let's make the Jar Jar Binks movie because he just talks a lot and all he does is spout nonsense.
I would dispute that last one a little bit, because the type of humor that Deadpool is employing, the type of humor Jar Jar is employing are completely different.
Okay.
I think a lot of the appeal of Deadpool is if you find the jokes funny, you're a lot more willing to forgive the lack of character. So it doesn't necessarily make the movie bad. It makes the character undefined. So your enjoyment of the movie has to rely a lot more on your own sense of humor if you think what he's doing is funny or if it's not. Because a good character can make bad jokes and still be a good character, and you're like, oh, that was kind of a dumb joke, but I'm really still invested in this story, so it's okay. Spencer's now mad that you compared Jar Jar to Deadpool.
It does come down to some amount of taste, too. Here's another comparison that you might not like either. Okay, really quick here.
Tim's saying Jar Jar's the writers talking down to the audience.
Well, Jar Jar was made so 2-year-olds would laugh. That's essentially what George Lucas has said.
You're right.
And he got the name from his little kid. He got all the name of everything from his little kid. Anyway.
Even the accent.
Yes. Animaniacs, okay? A
Oh,
lot of people hate me for this. I'm just going to briefly say I have the same problem with them that I do with Deadpool. Talk too much. Most of what they say isn't funny. No consequences to their actions. They just harass people who may be good or may be bad people, but they harass them and there is no consequences. It's the ultimate kid, power fantasy of I can get away with saying whatever I want. I'm indestructible. And nobody can stop me.
See, and that's why I say, and I think the point also applies to Animaniacs, which is a show that I actually do like a lot.
There's portions of Animaniacs I like, okay?
Well, hold on, let me finish my point.
Go ahead.
And that is kind of the point I made previously. When you've got characters that are like that, it all comes down to, was that funny? Or was that not funny? And that's a lot more subjective. If you think, if it's okay if the Animaniacs are beating up on Michelangelo or whatever, if you find the jokes are funny. Like, you look at...
I was thinking about that Michelangelo episode, actually.
I mean, the Animaniacs are basically based...
At first I thought you meant the Ninja Turtle, and then I realized you meant...
No, I meant the actual...
The painter, the
right.
Renaissance painter.
It's like the actual, what the Animaniacs are based on, which is basically the Marx Brothers, more or less. Groucho is also kind of this, is basically Yakko Warner is Groucho Marx.
Groucho's way funnier.
That's see, he's the exact same type of character, but you like him a lot more because that sense of humor, his sense of humor appeals to you more. So it's not the character so much
as
the
smarter,
writing.
though, I would say.
Right. Funny / not funny / seriously racist problem.
Are we talking about Groucho?
I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
Yeah, we've already made Jewish comedian jokes. That's a terrible Groucho.
That was pretty bad.
That's the silliest thing I've ever heard.
Oh.
Oi. Sorry, I went into a different Jewish comedian there, which was one of the Three Stooges. I don't know, maybe all of them.
Let's say...
Let's say Mo. Simpsons
okay, so Tim is now saying, it's okay if the story of Ready Player One is passé if the book is funny. The book's not funny. It's not even a comedy. It's not even trying to be funny. So you can't apply comedy rules to Ready Player One because it's not trying to be funny, first of all. You've got to take dramatic works different from comedic works because you can give the characters and story of comedic works a little more leeway because that's not the point of them. And so Ready Player One isn't a comedy. It's not supposed to be funny. It's references. It's supposed to be cool. It's supposed to be cool that kids 50 years in the future care about what you cared about when you were a kid. It's if Animaniacs was the ultimate kid fantasy where kids can do whatever they want with no consequences, Ready Player One is the ultimate adult fantasy. Not that kind of adult fantasy. The ultimate adult fantasy where somebody who is
grown-up fantasy.
Where somebody who's old, who's obsessed with the past, who says everything was best when I was a teenager, not because everything objectively was the best when you're a teenager, but because
I liked it.
When you're a teenager, you're really into pop culture, and that is what cements itself into your brain. I've got a boss.
And that's all your memories.
I've got a boss who is in his early 60s, who is of the staunch opinion that if nothing... Sorry, I just lost my track.
No human history happened after...
Not human history.
When he grew up.
He doesn't like any music that was written after 1974. That
He's
is
Homer Simpson.
Seriously, something that he has said.
Everybody knows rock attained perfection in 1974.
Exactly. Sponsored by the guy from Apple Computers.
What? Computers?
Tim, I'm not saying the book doesn't have jokes in it, but it's not a comedy. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about those.
I think we've eliminated most of our audience by by now talking about things that they like.
Right. Well, and Tim's like, says the people who play ancient video games all the time.
But we're not saying they're the best thing ever.
Number
we
one,
are
we're not
saying
that.
Yes, we play them for nostalgia purposes because we enjoy them.
Right.
But we don't say this is inherently better. Like, we're not saying Joust is inherently better than Call of Duty. You know, these are the ones we like, and so we play them.
Hold on, now I'm trying to think. Is Joust objectively better than Call of Duty?
I just said we are not saying that.
Oh, sorry. No, but well, here's the thing though. We play these old games, which is it's fine because we're not focusing on the fact that this is great because it's from the 80s. I think when we play them, we comment on their quality. We try to comment on their quality objectively. Like when we play Joust with the sister, which we've done. You can go back and watch the video on the player in the doodler.com.
It's pretty funny. There was a hand in the lava.
There was hands in the lava. It's still a fun game. We're not playing it because it was made in the 80s. We're playing it because it was a fun game. And it's one, the reason that we play a lot of these old games is because they're games that I know a lot about and I can talk about. We tried playing some modern games our very first stream, if you remember, and I don't think most of you won't because most of you weren't with us at the time, unless Megabib suddenly shows up. He was our chatter at the time. Is Super Mario 3 better than the new Zelda game? That's apples and oranges, really.
Yes.
Hashtag hands in the lava. I like it.
Wind Waker has gotten a perfect score, so
like
that's subjective too.
We tried playing, I think, what it was Mass
Not
Effect.
Wind Waker. I meant Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild. We tried playing, what was it, Mass Effect 2, I think?
Yeah.
And the reason we didn't keep doing like modern games like that was just because you didn't find much that you could draw about them. I could probably talk about Mass Effect just as much as I could talk about King's Quest. We just feel like playing old games like King's Quest, we've got a lot more goofy material.
They fit my drawing style better, and usually we know a little bit more about the King's Quest than and a lot of our audience
perhaps
seemed to like a little bit better the retro games.
Well, at that point, we hadn't really built up an audience yet, so I think that was a chicken and egg thing.
Our commentary was better. We found that our commentary was better when we chose a particular type of game.
Right. When we chose games we knew a lot about, and games that, like, we've played a few games on the stream that have been less than stellar, like when we did Kirby's Adventure, for example, which is a one that I still haven't even edited, let alone posted, even though we recorded it back in like January.
It looks great.
Yeah, the Kirby's.
I really like the drawings.
Kirby's Adventure is a great game, but we didn't have a whole lot to say about it other than what he just said now. That took about 10 seconds. That was like the 3 hours of the stream. So I never edited it, and we'll probably never post it. I might post it eventually as a Patreon exclusive. So support our Patreon if you want to see our terrible, our crap videos.
It wasn't that bad. You were just mad because nobody was in chat and you had a cold sore.
Well, that's true. That was also the other part of the commentary.
It would have been okay if you hadn't kept pointing out how bad the commentary was.
I know. That was it was not a good.
But here's the thing: we keep trying to improve where we find what is putting out our best content. Okay, that works with our own particular style.
I keep looking at the right to see if the recordings, so don't take that personally.
I forgive you.
Thank you.
And trying to find ways to improve, trying to find games that we want to do that we think that other people want us to do too, and enjoy seeing. But we try to we are trying to get better and try to improve the content. Not just go to the lowest common denominator.
Right.
And although we did try to put out Undertale and nobody cared.
It's true.
Which is one of the most popular games on the internet, and no one cared.
And the Undertale, and it's partly because, I don't know, that the one that I didn't post publicly. That was a Patreon thing. And then the other one was my nieces, who are young.
Yeah, it just needed a little bit more polish, that's all.
Right.
But,
thanks, Carl? He said in all caps, I'll tell you if it stops recording. Because that's all he cares about now. He's not paying attention to the content.
Well.
Hey, Carl, let's talk about Pokemon. Pokemon. Now we are popular.
Here's things you like, Carl, so you like the stream.
See, that...
Mudkip.
That boy ain't right.
No, I was trying to think of other Pokemon that he cares about, but all I can think of is all the other ones that his brothers care about.
Right.
But that's his favorite, Mudkip. There you go.
Here's okay. So Tim's bringing up that he thinks Ready Player One, the movie, is going to be a good popcorn flick. I'm not talking about the movie because the movie could be good. I don't know.
The trailer looks good. Go and watch it.
The trailer looks fun.
I encourage you to watch. Sorry, go ahead. I'm just repeating myself.
The trailer looks fun. Also because a lot of the big problems with the book is that the nostalgia was such a focus. I mean, he goes on for pages about descriptions of games or lists of games, or the main character loved this game, created in 1987 by Synapse Software, where you played as a blue pharaoh hunter out for revenge from... I'm just making stuff up. I don't know. That's not an actual game that I know of.
It should be one.
A blue pharaoh hunter out for revenge.
Sounds like something that came out on the Atari.
Pharaoh's Curse, 1984.
Or the ColecoVision.
Sin is tops.
Excuse me?
That's the password for Pharaoh's Curse. You type that into the keyboard and you start on level 3 instead of level 0.
Sin is tops?
Yeah, because Synapse Software made the game. So SYN is tops. Because they're the best software company. So you have to type that in.
You see,
so you
this
can start
reference
later.
doesn't make any sense, and that's what we're getting at.
Wait. You're saying this completely irrelevant story about Synapse Software's Pharaoh's Curse made in 1984 has no relevance to the ongoing story and characters of this vlog?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Jeffrey, because we had to talk about this recently. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have things to say on the stream, and I especially will revert to my stupid catchphrases that I tend to see.
That's why we made a bingo game, because it happens so often.
And we do that, but there are times when I try not to just rely on that, and I try to get good commentary.
Right.
One of our best ones was a recent stream, in my opinion, where we talked about a game that was all about nostalgia factor, which was New King's Quest Chapter 4?
Chapter 4 is the ice one.
Chapter 4.
That will post in... February, I think. So it'll be a while.
And I don't know if it was as funny as our other ones. We still had comedy in there because we throw in comedy, as you can see during our vlog here. We'll make, even during a serious discussion about stupid video games, we will.
It's funny because I was punching down.
You were punching sideways and backwards.
Well, it's down like my head's slightly higher in the frame.
It's because you have a gigantic head.
It's also because I forgot to say I got a new monitor. It's a 27-inch one, so the webcam is slightly higher.
This has nothing to do with what I was.
No, it doesn't. It's got so you can see my forehead's even bigger than it was.
Exactly my point.
Sorry, I had to put in my irrelevant trivia.
Okay.
But it's nostalgic, so
it's not
billion copies.
It's not even nostalgic.
Go ahead. King's Quest Chapter 4.
Yeah, and we had one of our best discussions, and it was about writing and characters and how that game failed in what it was trying to do because it was so focused on nostalgia, in being that King's Quest is just wacky comedy, right? We'll just throw in wacky comedy.
It wasn't so much nostalgia, that was part of it, but the focus was on the wrong thing.
Right. And how that failed, it really got in the way of the actual story. Okay, it could have been a much better story had they made just slightly different decisions.
You will, Tim. That's why I bought the bigger monitor. He's asking if he comes and guests again, he'll actually be able to see the screen now.
Yeah, you can see past his giant head. There's a running gag.
Wow, we froze there for a second.
And your head was like in the... it's filling the entire screen.
This giant head will devour us all!
No, I was talking about the statue.
Anyway, so the King's Quest Chapter 4 commentary was better because we had things to talk about the game that weren't just our goofy catchphrases. And
the problem with Kirby, if I'm to reference, is that there was really hardly any story to speak of, and so we didn't have as much to say.
But, I mean, even like games like when we did Super Mario 3 or Super Mario World, which are games I really like, and I think our commentary was fine, but those are projects that I've really gone back and watched a whole lot of. As opposed to, like, my favorite stream right now, I have two favorite streams, actually.
Here it comes.
The first one, Tim, you will appreciate this, was your first one.
Yes,
when we did
the
like
Tim Blitz.
When we did like those 10 just random things. Because we had a whole lot to talk about on all of those.
Oh, man. Our commentary was great. Watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, was one of our best. I really like that.
We had zingers like crazy.
And the only weak game that night was Jumpman, I think. And the rest of them, I think, were pretty spot on. The other problem with this giant monitor is whenever I touch the table, it shakes the camera. Captain, we're under attack!
Good thing I've been watching Classic Trek. I know how to fall over on my desk. I mean, my chair. My desk if I'm, at the con.
So there was that one. And then my other favorite one was one we did about a year and a half ago when we did King's Quest 2, the VGA one.
Yes, with Death.
It had Death in it. He was actually just a boatkeeper.
Dracula,
he just looked like
right?
that. And yeah, Count Radical. Yeah! Because we had a whole lot to say about that too, but there was also a lot of gags. Like the adventure games kind of lend themselves a lot to the type of humor that I think I'm good at, which is kind of, I grew up with a lot of Mystery Science Theater, so that quippy stuff. If you like it, that's cool. If not, that's okay too. But that's one of my favorites. And I have a feeling that this is what we're talking about in the vlog, like our first one that we did. So I don't know where I was going with that. The Iron Giant is not from the 80s, that is correct, but that's because in the book, they use a different giant robot that they couldn't get the rights to for the movie.
It's Ultraman.
Ultraman.
You remember Ultraman, Tim? We rented that game and couldn't beat anything, so we took it back.
So it's Ultraman in the book, which is 80s, but they do Iron Giant in the movie because I guess Warner Brothers owns it. Anyway. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. So, now I forgot what I was saying. So let's talk.
I know, we were yelling about something.
King's Quest Chapter
4.
We were talking about commentary. Now we've got to rewind.
We were talking about how that one felt a little bit better because our content that we were saying was better rather than... we weren't slipping to the easy joke.
That's right.
Which is just us repeating stupid catchphrases we've seen in the past, or just easy references. Jeff and I watch and we're interested and read a lot of pop culture, okay? And sometimes we make these dumb references because it reminds us of something, right?
Well, and you like watch the Dokapon videos where we've got the two girls who are of a different generation, where they don't get like half of our Simpsons references, which is fine because I don't get half of their Homestuck references, so it evens out.
It's just about cats. That's all. All you gotta know.
Homestuck?
Yeah.
There's just that one song that she loves so much.
It just stuck in my head.
Yeah, I was like Angry Cats. I don't know. I've tried to read Homestuck. I tried, guys. I tried. I'm holding the camera.
He's pretending to hold the camera. He's not actually holding it, guys.
Now I'm holding it.
But he can't actually reach out and choke you, so he's got to do something.
No, I'm like putting my hands on your shoulder, like I'm shaking. Like I tried to read Homestuck.
Shaking you like a baby.
I tried so hard.
This man's a monster.
Now I feel like an old.
Call the CPA.
I feel like an old man because something from the next generation is something I didn't understand. Even though Homestuck started in 2007. When I was like 25, and I should have been in the demographic for it, but I just couldn't. I tried again. After I read Ready Player One, I tried to get back to Homestuck, being like, well, at least it wouldn't be as bad as Ready Player One.
I've tried to start that one like 3 times,
I could not find my place. I wasn't sure where I left off.
And weren't you already like a fifth of the way through?
I thought I was in the interlude between parts 3 and 4, but I'm not sure where in that interlude I was. I want to like Homestuck because then I can talk to my nieces again.
They'll forget about it. I assume.
So I tried to get them into Sierra games so we have something to talk about because I know them.
Well, here's another thing too on the stream. I try to get us out of our comfort zone and try to get Jeff into things that he doesn't particularly like as much. Like he says I hate Dr. Mario, and I say we have to play it then because I'm finally good at a game that you're not good at.
I liked our Dr. Mario stream. I'm just no good at it. You're right.
Yeah, and not just that, not just Dr. Mario, but try to do different formats within reason. But I also understand there's certain types of games that he absolutely hates, or would not enjoy, or might not even make the best of our content, best of our stream. I loved a lot of beat 'em ups. And we've played some beat-em-ups that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, had great commentary. But some of the other ones I don't think would as much. One, because both of us had played that game, and so had Tim.
Right.
And so we all had things to say.
That was a game that I grew up, like I had when I was a kid, so I had a lot more to say about it. When we did the
third one.
When we did the stream with Levi, when we were playing all those fighting games I had no experience with. Hold on, we frozen? Okay, now we're back. You had a lot to say. I had almost nothing to say, and then Levi was Levi. So when and I still think those ones are funny. They haven't posted yet, but
but one was superior.
Yeah. I just think those ones are funny. The Tournament Fighters videos are actually kind of funny, just because those games are so bad, and the fact that you get so excited about that story, and you can deny it all you want. Watch the video when it comes out.
It wasn't what I meant.
I know, but it's what you said.
It wasn't what I meant. But here's the thing. This kind of relates back. So we're like, let's say take Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, okay? And our experience with that. We had that great video, and what we keep trying to do is we keep trying to recreate what made those good ones good by trying new things, and by trying different things. Well, it's not just nostalgia. It's not like, whoa, that one was great, so let's play every Ninja Turtles game out there. Okay, that's not going to make it good. All right?
Right.
Even though we're nostalgic for a lot of them. I could play the entire Ninja Turtle series, but I don't know if they'll make great or even good content.
Well, and it's the same with like the old Sierra stuff. Like there are some Sierra games I think we've done really a good job with, and then there are some that we've done that aren't as good because the games themselves, whether or not they're Sierra games, they're nostalgic. We just the material is such that we didn't have as much to do with. I'm sorry, I'm like trying to burp and it's not coming up. So say something real quick.
HP down.
That was Chrono Trigger, not Sierra.
Yeah, but that's when you burp.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Screen.
No, but like when Space Quest 6 especially, I think we kind of had to do Space Quest 6 because we needed to finish out the series.
Yeah.
And you watch it and it's not like bad. It's not like Kirby's Adventure bad.
It speaks to the game when the only good commentary we had was an argument between me and his sister about something completely irrelevant.
And I'm not saying Space Quest 6 is a terrible game. It's fine. My favorite of that series is still number 4. But the point is that it didn't make for a good stream because it was an old Sierra game. The games that are good streams are good streams because they're good games, or they're games with a lot that we can talk about. It's not the nostalgia factor that makes it good. The nostalgia factor is part of it, but it's not the focus of it. And that's kind of my point, rolling this back to what this vlog is supposed to be about. So, because if we play...
Nostalgia doesn't inherently make something good, is what you're trying to say.
Right. And so when...
But it can add to something.
It can add to something, but here's the thing. Being good and being marketable, or being something, or being popular...
Or successful.
Or successful, however you want to say it, are two different parts of the whole what makes something worthwhile. So with something like Ready Player One, I don't think it's good. I think it's too chock full of references, and I think the story without the references is cliche and bare-boned and terrible. And I'm not going to talk about that too much because that would be a lot of spoilers. But the prose is badly written, and the fact that the characters are never in any danger, ever.
Like Deadpool or the Animaniac.
Like, and every I'm sorry, I can't talk about it without going to spoilers, so I'm like, ugh. Anyway, so that's my biggest problem with Ready Player One. Not just because it's overloaded with references, but because without the references, there's nothing that I find interesting in it. Even the post-apocalyptic world in which they live isn't fleshed out. They're just like, the world used too much oil and then it ran out, so people are poor.
After the last nuclear war, cats got the ability to shoot lasers out of their mouths. And now everyone uses laser cats.
What is this?
It's Laser Cats by Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
That was the premise for this whole series. And
Gotcha.
you got to watch that sometimes. They've done like 10 of them, and they're amazingly bad.
Right. Tim does think that you and my sister arguing were pretty hilarious.
No, it was funny, but that was the most interesting thing about that stream, because the game was so terrible. We didn't have as much to say about because it was so bad.
And as much as Tim hated playing Way Out, he does say it was funny.
We got more Maze games where that came from, Tim. Cleftangle. Nostalgia. Am I right?
So if we here's the other thing. We've had some viewers. Marin was on here for about half a second at the beginning, then I guess she disappeared. That watched this. I mean, we've played a lot of kind of more obscure games, like for example, like Pickle Wars or Sleuth or like Styx World. These like weird DOS games that nobody's ever heard of. I've got nostalgia for Pickle Wars because I played it when my dad brought it home from work on a floppy in 1993 or whatever. But I don't share it with you because I'm like, this is better than the games now because I played it when I was young. I'm sharing it with you because I thought it was fun, and I think you'd think it was fun. It was something I could talk about.
Or at least you might think it's fun,
Right. And if you don't, that's okay. But it's not fun because it was made in 1994 or 3. It's a fun game that happened to have been made in 1994 or 3 or whatever. So that's the difference. The problem with Ready Player One is that they have things in there that he says this is a good movie, not because, I mean, it's a good movie that happened to come out in 1983. No, it's a good movie because it came out in 1983. This piece of pop culture is good because it came out in 1985. This Duran Duran song has to be played at this party, not because Duran Duran is great, although Duran Duran is great, but because it came out in the 80s and therefore automatically is great no matter what. There's a plot point where he talks about the game The Dungeons of Daggeroth.
I've heard of that one.
You've heard of it? You have? Have you heard of it before Ready Player One?
I don't think so.
Nobody has, because it's an obscure game for the TRS-80, which I'm enough of a nerd to actually know what a TRS-80 is before I read the book. Although I doubt that 98% of the audience who read that book knew what a TRS-80 is. It's an old computer made by Radio Shack, basically, and it sucked.
TI-99 4A.
That was not a... Sorry.
It was not a TRS-80.
It's not a TRS-80. Sorry, I just had a thing pop up in the corner that was talking about dinner. Has nothing to do with anything.
Pop culture references.
Pop culture references. I got a lot of the pop culture references Ready Player One. A lot of the even weird obscure ones. Like the fact... Here's my other... Okay. I'm sorry. I keep going back to this. Because it's so much the problem. So James Halliday, who is like the instigator in the book, who owned the world and then died, and it's his will that everyone's searching for.
He's like the Steve Jobs of the
He's
world.
like the Steve Jobs, Richard Garriott. The first half of his life is literally Richard Garriott's backstory. Richard Garriott, if you don't know, is an uber nerd who created the Ultima series and also the Wing Commander series, which this is our second Wing Commander reference for the night. Although I think Spencer...
Freddie Prinze Jr.
I think Spencer left.
That's my Wing Commander reference.
Nostalgia is an industry, Tim, and that's kind of my issue. I'll get to that in a second, though. So they give him half of Richard Garriott's backstory, and then about halfway through they switch him to Steve Jobs, and then give him the rest of his backstory. Steve Jobs, who created a VR world instead of an iPhone. More or less. And so it's like even his characters either have to be based on something from the 80s or like there's no originality in it because everything is based on something else. And I know that's true of most fiction generally, but it's so blatant and so obvious.
It's like pulling back the curtain during a play and saying, hey, this is how this works, guys.
Well, it's not even that, because knowing how it works, it's everything is a remix. Is a video that I saw once that was basically like all works of fiction are remixes of other works. But when there's a difference between an homage and a parody and a ripoff. An homage is when something is similar to something in reference to it, but it's also its own thing.
It could stand on its own. And it's great that if you know the other thing, but you don't have to know it to appreciate it.
And a ripoff is something that is basically the exact same thing as somebody else, but you've just changed superficial things like names.
It's like those, you got like Kung Fu Panda that comes out by DreamWorks, right? And then you've got like Karate Panda that comes out in those like 50-cent dollar bins and the DVD things. And that's not the actual name, but that's...
Right, it's the ripoff.
That somebody just made in China and was like, look, it's the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. And so the core story of Ready Player One, I think, is a Hulk smash of about 5 different franchises combined with the 80s Wikipedia page. Nostalgia, let me talk about this. Nostalgia is an industry now, Tim brings up. He says, classic cars, movie remakes, vinyl sales, the NES and SNES Mini, for example, all prove that people are willing to pay for it if it's good or not. True. and that's not new either.
People always bought stuff, whether it's good or not.
I mean, that's part of the reason why the adult jokes in the Animaniacs were great, because the kids could watch it for the hilarious people smashing Michelangelo on the head with an anvil or whatever. And the adults think it's funny because it's Kirk Douglas.
Talks about Byron Allen for whatever, or Carrot Top was one of their jokes they made.
Or
all the
like,
time.
yeah, or like there's, you know, the one where they break in, or what was it? I think it was Tiny Toons actually, where they like break into the talk show room of the hotel, and it's just basically just David Letterman and Oprah and Arsenio Hall, and it's not even
that's from the summer vacation one.
And the joke,
Tiny Toons.
The joke is that they're all in the room and they all just spout their catchphrases. Like Arsenio Hall's sitting there and he goes, "Let's get busy." Ooh, 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 ooh. And then
David Letterman punches a camera.
David Letterman is like, "We're having some fun now."
Oprah starts crying about something or other. And Barbara Walters is there.
And the joke isn't, they don't do anything funny. They just do their catchphrase, and the joke is supposed to be, look, here's some things that you recognize. The kids watching it didn't recognize it. I mean, when I was 8, did I know who Oprah was? Maybe. Did I know who Arsenio Hall was? Kind of. But that was for the adults watching that are like, yeah, I watch Oprah all the time, and now I'm watching this dumb show with my kids, and it's got an Oprah joke in it. So it's fun.
Now it has value.
Now it has value because it's tickled my nostalgia center.
My nostalgia center's good. Stop it!
Demon attack! Astro smash! Pac-Man! La 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 la!
I'm gonna tickle your yellow tinges.
Punch down!
Thanks, Deadpool.
Tim's like, be honest, you watched Oprah every day.
I have watched Oprah.
Right.
When I was a kid.
When you were a baby, you memorized the Oprah strategy guide.
No references to our previous streams.
That's right, because that's nostalgia for the early days of the Player and the Doodler.
Yeah, we're our own thing now.
Remember back when these were our only doodles? I
thought you were pointing at your hair.
No, I'm pointing at the poster back there, which I can't point at very well because this webcam is reversed.
We're our only doodles, like this 100 doodles that I did.
And now we've got like 600.
I have counted them. There's more like 300, I think.
Right. We're up to 700 videos. They're not all posted yet, but that are uploaded.
We have more videos than I have doodles?
And we still... Yeah, because videos that were like 7 parts, you drew like 3 things for. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And also there are a lot of like warm-up games that you didn't do any doodles for, so it happens. So, nostalgia is an industry. Nostalgia sells. But it doesn't make things good. But it doesn't make things bad. But is a reliance on nostalgia good or bad? And if... Okay. I want to talk for a second about... This is kind of related. The Emoji Movie.
Here it comes.
Which I have not seen. But got like a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. According to all the reviewers that I read... The Emoji Movie is not just a terrible movie for all of the reasons that you think the Emoji Movie would be a terrible movie about. About the fact that basically the genesis of the movie was... Sorry, just waiting for you to stop playing with your mic. So, this mic may not be happening in the future.
Can you hear me?
Because of how itchy it makes you, apparently.
Chat, can you still hear me pretty well?
Yeah, let us know if his audio went weird.
It's just that it got sucked back into the tape a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so the Emoji Movie is a terrible movie, but not just terrible. It's terrible in the sense that its genesis was, let's make a movie about something popular. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I bet you that the Lego Movie was made under the same premise. But the Lego Movie was a good movie.
Had a great story.
Had a great story, had fun
Character development.
Had a lot of good jokes.
Tons of references.
Tons of references.
Tons of references.
But you didn't need to know the references in order to enjoy the movie. To get all the jokes, you'd need to know all the references.
Same thing with the Batman Lego Movie.
But the movie stood up on its own without having to know all the references. If you saw, like in the Lego Batman movie, when they had all the bad guys come out at the end from the different franchises.
That was at the beginning.
No, the beginning from
that,
different
yeah,
Batman, but from the end,
sorry,
literally
you're
like
right, you're right.
Voldemort and like Sauron and stuff.
And not Godzilla, but that was actually the Kraken from Clash of the Titans. I had to explain that to my nephews and nieces.
Right. Well, and they call him the Kraken. They don't call him Godzilla.
They thought it was Godzilla still.
Well, yeah, it's the closest, more popular analog.
Like Ultraman and Iron Giant.
Sure.
Emoji movie.
So what I'm saying is the genesis being what's something popular, let's make a movie about it, is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. Just like nostalgia is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. The problem is the Emoji movie was lazily put together, was basically... the point of the movie is that there's one emoji that apparently keeps changing his face, and so they have to get him to the cloud before the phone gets deleted. That's not precisely what it is. I don't care what it's about.
Did I mention his best friend is a talking pie?
It's actually a talking hand.
Oh my goodness.
With a butt. Because fart jokes. Every bad kids movie has to have fart jokes. That, I think, is a law of cinema. The problem with the Emoji movie is that it's so cynically obvious a cash grab from the people who paid to have their apps mentioned.
From the people who brought you these apps comes...
the Emoji movie. From the people who brought you Dropbox and Candy Crush and... I don't know what other apps are in there.
There's no other apps.
They have a lot of Dropbox references, apparently.
Those are the two apps that have ever been made. Candy Crush and Dropbox.
Those are two that are specifically mentioned in the movie. That's why I brought them up. And I don't know. There's like a bunch of them.
There's probably other apps.
But the point is that these little like 5-year-olds who are like, hey, emojis, talking hands and smiley faces. Hey, Mom, what's Dropbox? I want Dropbox.
It's the same problem I had with Olaf and Frozen.
Except
argument
Olaf wasn't trying to make your parents spend money on apps.
No, he was trying to make your parents spend money on merchandise.
Well, okay, fine. But I'm sure the Emoji movie has little happy faces and hands with butts that you could buy. Frozen wasn't made to sell Olaf toys.
It kind of was.
You think that.
It's Disney.
I know, but that's a side. But the people making the movie cared about the project.
True. That is true.
That's
I will
the
give you
thing.
that.
The Emoji movie was made with the most cynical...
I'm talking more about that particular character was specifically written for like 2-year-olds.
Okay, fine. That's fine. But imagine...
And that's fine. I just couldn't stand him for that reason.
Okay.
All right? That's the problem I have with Olaf.
I don't really have a problem with Olaf. I thought he had his moments.
Meh.
But I don't think he was as annoying as some other similar sidekick characters, personally.
Hey. Sorry, God.
I haven't actually seen Moana, so I can't say that. I'm like the only one of the 5 people in the world who haven't seen it yet.
I will explain it to you, that character. It's a chicken who's brain dead who tries to eat rocks. And they lock him in a basket because he is such a detriment to the plot.
Moana,
such a bad character that the characters on screen actually get rid of him.
A lot of the stuff I heard about Moana is they do a lot of lampshading of Disney tropes, kind of like Enchanted did.
No,
but,
it really is.
Yeah.
It's essentially trying to steal a lot from Aladdin.
Moana,
I consider a better movie than Frozen, but it still has its problems.
Well, and we're not the target audience of those movies anymore, I think we have to realize. So anyway, I forgot where I was again. Oh, the Lego movie, Emoji movie. Emoji movie was a cynical grab that was... It was things that kids recognized from their phones or from their older siblings' phones that were these cute little characters. They decided to make a movie completely centered around them because they knew it would appeal to these kids. Ready Player One is the exact same thing, but to a different demographic, where it's stuff that you recognize in a bog standard, paper thin, boring setting that had potential, but the author could not get past the need to make the references in order to make the movie any good. Or the book, I guess. It's not a movie yet. Sir Watts is playing a game.
I hope it's Joust.
No, it's Geometry Dash.
That's way better.
He's not watching. He's playing Geometry Dash. I just got really sad. So you're going to have to pick up on the commentary while I pout.
I've been trying to pick up on the commentary, but you keep interrupting me.
Pick it up!
I said mostly what I wanted to say. I could go off about other series too, but I think we've kind of driven the point home.
Okay. The point is this. Nostalgia tickles your brain and makes you think something's better than it is. And sometimes it can be used well, and sometimes it can be used poorly.
But
Ready Player One, I think, is used poorly. But some people will like it just because it's got that stuff and it tickles the nostalgia part of their brain. That's my point.
And it can be so much better if it has a strong story with strong characters, with character development, with actual stakes, with relationships that matter in them.
And some people would argue that Ready Player One has those things. I disagree because it feels so generic to me. The characters, and it feels like the characters are ultra powerful. It feels like the characters don't really, none of them are dynamic. The guy at the beginning is the same as the guy at the end. He doesn't go through any real character changes. His circumstances change. He goes from being a poor dorky hacker to a rich dorky hacker, but he's still a dorky. He's still the exact same character. The love interest changes in the fact that she falls in love. That's her change. Nobody else goes through any development. It's just generic good guys who never change going up against a cartoon bad guy who they eventually defeat without going through anything that was really that hard. Even the hard things they do, they have no problems doing because the world is constructed in such a way that this person with this specific knowledge of the 80s can beat every obstacle that comes to them, which is boring because there's no conflict. There's no reason to care. I don't care about those people. The 8 deadly words, look it up on TV Tropes, of fiction is... Wait. I don't care about... That's only 6 words. I don't remember what the 8 deadly words are. Look them up. But it's basically when you don't care about the characters, doesn't matter what else the story has, it's not going to work. Nostalgia or not. Should we, for Tim, who's the only one who's stuck with us this long, I think, should we play a game for them?
Yes, but I got to take a short break to fix this mic and to get a drink of water because it is hot in this room.
Okay. All right, guys. For those of you who are still here, we're going to take a short break, and when we're posting this vlog on YouTube, the game that will come afterwards, we probably won't post until it comes up in our queue. So you have to wait a while to see it.